Uneducated Economist here. Shoot. Oh, there it is. Bottle of water. So, got me a new jacket. Pretty cool. It's heated, which is really nice. You know, I always thought things like a heated jacket were kind of a little, what is it, over the top kind of luxury thing. It's just like, why don't you just put on a hoodie, call it good? What do you need a heated jacket for? And holy moly, how comfortable is this thing? I mean, I got home, I didn't even want to take it off. Like, I was just like, felt so like comfortable in it that I just wanted to keep it on all the time. So I'm pretty happy with this new jacket, and I look really good in it too. So anything that makes me look good, I like. And so anyway, thank you guys for joining the channel. How many do we have up in here? 13 of you. Let's get it up to about 40 before we start talking this real estate thing. Had Peter Schiff on the show. That was really fun. Now, I have to tell you, Peter's a pretty cool guy for coming on the show. Like, I don't know how it is, because I was talking with his assistant. I wasn't talking straight with Peter before I actually met him, which was on Zoom. That was the very first time that I had ever met Peter, was the time that you guys witnessed. Now, it was pretty funny when the Zoom meeting starts, because I'm sitting here in my car and I'm waiting, and the camera fires up, and I see, Europack in the background, and I see his old logo and his desk chair and everything. And I see him, he pops in the screen, and I see him, and he looks at the screen, and he grabs his microphone, and he clips it on his shirt, and he looks at the screen again, and he grabs his little earpiece, and he puts that in, and he goes, "Are you in your car?" And I was just like, yeah, man, I'm doing my videos for my car. My fans won't let me out of it. So I tried to do an office setting, and they told me if I did the office, they wouldn't show up. So I'm stuck in my car. It's part of my brand. And he was just like, okay. And I was just like, so I was hoping to, just have a conversation with you for about an hour. He says, for an hour? He says, we should have started this 5 minutes ago. We would have been, already 5 minutes into this. And it was so funny. Like, I'm like, all right, Peter, man, let's get it started. So I get it started, and Peter ended up being one of the coolest conversations. Really, he was very engaging in the questions. He listened to what I had to say. He answered them for the viewers, and I think in the way that the viewers would be most receptive of. I really appreciate it. Like, when I first started, I was almost a little nervous talking to him, because I mean, it's Peter Schiff, he's a pretty big name to have on the channel. And so I was a little bit like nervous, earlier in the day, thinking, okay, well, and I was doing this on my lunch break too, so it was just like I had to like coordinate lunches, because it was during a time when I normally wouldn't take my lunch. So it was just like I was kind of nervous about the whole thing, trying to get it all set up. And then, once we started in on the conversation, I mean, Peter was just cool as could be. And I just really, really appreciate that he took a whole hour of his day, because you have to think about it. Like, I don't think he was expecting to do a whole hour with me. I just kind of took it from him, really. But I have to think about it. It was just like, how much Peter does in a day, like how much he has to operate and how much his time is worth. To think about it, like, for him to give up an hour of his day for me, how much that cost him to do that? I mean, that's incredible. So I really appreciate him doing that, and it was a great conversation. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It was just the last, within the last couple of days that I put that video out, and it was a good time. So anyway, how many we got up in here? 109 of you, right on. Go hit the like button if you would, please. This is going to get the algorithm to pick up the video, go spread it around YouTube some more. We'll get more people up in here. But I really wanted to talk about the real estate, and especially the article that I leave down in the description for you guys to this to the real estate market right now, because it's really what I was kind of suspecting. Especially after talking to Mike Zuber and Matthew, the lumberjack landlord. Both of these guys are getting back into their investments, like getting into purchasing properties again after they haven't been purchasing for a while. And this is something that is like it's not necessarily new, but new to the game when you think about like investors who are looking for rental properties to go to rent out. Not necessarily the home buyers looking for a place to live, but people who are looking for investment properties. And this is where I think like a lot of people are going to miss out on the opportunities if they don't take advantage of them soon and look for the absolute greatest deals that are happening now, because The institutional buyers, they're going to get in, and they're going to get in and they're going to rent these properties out to the people, because you can find it as part of Cantillon's effect. So it's not just like, just happens to be the system and the way it is now, and that, markets are going to crash and everybody who's out there sitting on the sidelines is going to be able to buy a home. It doesn't go down like that. Like, you have to think about the flow of money into a state, and when this new flow of money is coming into the state, what happens to the rents? Because that's exactly what Cantillon is talking about. You think about this is back from the 1700s that he is talking about. There is no better example of the abundance of money to a state than to see the rents and leases go up. Now, he talks about the cause and effects of all kinds of money pricing and all kinds of like commodities and manufactured goods and stuff like that. But when it comes to the prices of leases and rents, he says there's no better example of the abundance of money than to look at those two things. Now, look at one of the charts that I leave down there from the Federal Reserve showing the rental index, the primary resident rental index, and it is not going down. And if you look at it from all the history, through all the recessions, through all the stuff, there has never been a time when rental income or the rental index has really gone down. Maybe a little bit during, like, what was it, 2009 through 2010, during the right after the great financial crisis was taking place. There was some issues right then with the rental index inside of that chart. Other than that, there was really no time that it hasn't gone down, ever. Right? So what does that say about the people who are looking for a return on capital investment when you have a recession coming in and rents never really go down? And especially if you don't have toxic assets in the system and all the other things that we have talked about. So think about this. When there is any kind of issue inside of a house, like somebody's going through a divorce, or there's a divorce, death, or destitution, something, one of those three, one of the three Ds. Anything like that comes up, boom, that house is going to get snapped up right away. How many buyers are you in competition with when everybody is sitting on the sidelines waiting for that house to fall in price? So, I mean, do they all have to come down at once in order to be a supply that's enough for everybody to buy a house cheap? Or as soon as one house gets down there, you have to be super ready for it, on the ball ready for it? You see where I'm kind of getting at here, guys? All right. Oh, the dice. Sorry, guys. Holy moly. There you are. All right. Conservative number per real estate deal is key to making sure it cash flows. That's right. And this is one of the things that Mike Zuber and Lumberjack Landlord talked about, is that buy box. Is that, you look at the house, you look at the down payment, the interest payment on it, all the stuff that goes into the cost of maintenance, whatever, that goes into this house. And at the end of it is an equation, right? So you punch all these numbers in, you have an equation at the end of it that says yes or no. And well, it's the yield of the house, like how much the investor would get off of the capital return, right? You put all this capital into it, how much of a return you get off of that, that's the yield. And that's what Mike Zuber and Lumberjack Landlord, that's what these guys are like adamant about, is that you look at this buy box, you punch these numbers in, and at the end of it, it says yes or no according to the rents in your area. So if you're in an area that has a particular rent, like, you can't ask for too much. If you ask for too little, it's no good. You have to look for what the average rental is in your area, and then look what the yield is on that house. You punch those numbers in. If the yield provides it for you, says this is enough return on my capital for the rents that I get, then you buy the house, right? This is how, like, I'm not explaining it as well as those guys do, because I don't do it every day, but those guys do it. And that's the point of the whole thing here, is that everybody is sitting on the sidelines renting a place, driving the rents up, because they're waiting for the prices to come down. And as soon as they come down, they're going to get snapped up by people who are super ready to buy it. I've been told you aren't buying the rental house, you are buying the tenant. Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good way to consider it. Let's go up here a little ways. How far up were we? Okay. Good afternoon from Lakeland, Florida. Hey, hit the like button. That's all-nighter. Thank you. Hello, UE. Who's that? Zero Silver Hawk? How are you? Happy New Year. I'm doing really well, man. Tonight I'm doing very well. What is that? I can't even read. Man, my eyes are so bad. I think that's Antoinette. ZSH in the house. Hey, dice already. Yeah, I got them up. All right. I can't wait to buy towards the end of 2023. You think it's at the end of 23? I'm sure Simon will read the chat and put the dice up soon. Yep, here they are. Okay, I can't hear anything without the dice. Jeez. All right, any predictions for the dice? Wow, you guys. All right, what's going on with the Goonies house? Yeah, I haven't heard. I don't know if there's anybody who's bought that yet. The dice could no longer afford the rent. Yeah. All right. Hey, the mic is in the house. All right. Hey. Take time. Peter is always awesome guest on everything he is on. Yeah, Peter was really fun. I mean, it was cool. Like I said, a lot of people. I didn't know how quite he was going to take, being on the Uneducated Economist. I mean, shoot, he's like normally on with like people who really know what the hell they're doing, right? And so here I am in this car trying to like, do the best I can with it. And I mean, I think that he was appreciative of the questions, I mean, I think they weren't exactly like the toughest questions in the world, but they were questions that I think were fitting to our viewers, to our audience. And I think that he answered them in a very like, thoughtful way. So I really appreciated the whole conversation. It was awesome. All right. It is just as bad to buy and just as it starts to drop than just before the peak, but they are probably buying with more of their own money rather than the rest who are all in on loans. Yeah, all right. Are we at a fork in the roads, either stagflation or hyperinflation? I don't think there's going to be a hyperinflation. I mean, even kind of considering some of the things that we're experiencing right now with like so I wanted to do this in a separate video because I really wanted to get the information, but I think I put some links down in the description already for it. But right now the Federal Reserve and their conducting of the repo facility and their interest on excess reserves, this is okay. This has actually caused the Federal Reserve to no longer profit, which is, and it's happened before, but this is really kind of interesting to think about if it carries on, excuse me, for any length of time. And like I said, I really wanted to do this in another video so I could compile some more information, take some notes, and like really give it to you guys, right? But ultimately, right now, the Federal Reserve is typically, the Federal Reserve would profit. If they profit, they would allow to be profiting enough to do their operating costs and, a little bit of whatever. Then everything else would go back to the Treasury. So if the Federal Reserve was making a ton of money, it's really just a benefit to the Treasury because all that would go back to the Treasury and basically offset the deficit. Right? So this is how the Federal Reserve would typically operate. The Federal Reserve is not it's not meant to be like a profitable, organization. Okay. But we all know with the deals within their knowledge and anyway, we'll set all that aside. That's basic idea behind it is that anything that's beyond their operating costs would go back to the Treasury. But unfortunately, right now, the Federal Reserve is not operating in that fashion. In fact, it's costing them to operate because they have the interest rates above what it is that they are profiting from the assets that they have. Now, like I said, I'm going to do another video that'll really break this down. But the point being is that before, you would have to think that the Treasury was borrowing from the Fed. And it doesn't quite work like that because the Federal Reserve can't lend right to the Treasury. But anyway, the Treasury was borrowing from the Fed. Fed would print money and buy the Treasuries. Right? But right now, the Federal Reserve, who would typically send their profits to the Treasury, is now actually under profit, like they're losing money. And that is causing a deferred asset, which means it's money that they owe to the Treasury. Right? Did the Treasury just become a creditor to the Fed on that? How long can that continue and still like I'm thinking the cause and effects from something like this. Now they're saying that it doesn't really change anything about the monetary policy as of right now. I'm just thinking, what if this is a new normal that starts kicking in? Would this start changing the monetary policy? What could be coming from that, right? The Federal Reserve used to be a creditor to the Treasury, and then all of a sudden now here the Treasury has the Fed in debt to them. Weird, right? Kind of weird to think about. All right. Wow, so many people here. Okay. Can rental arbitration prove to be profitable in this economy? I'm thinking, well, if you follow Cantillon's essay, I mean, I'm thinking that with all the money that's going on here, with everybody sitting on the sidelines, I'm listening to people talk about how much rental property, like, I mean, a one bedroom apartment here in Astoria is $1,800 a month. A single room in a house in a basement is going for $1,300 a month. I mean, it's like it's unreal. And yet the house payment that I got on my house from a year ago is 20, like with taxes and insurance, $2,200. So, I mean, think about that. Like, I mean, the chances, even if I was to lose my job, I would do my best to try and rent out the rooms or do whatever I can to keep my house. There's like no way that anybody from the previous year, anybody who has an interest rate under 4% is probably going to do whatever they can to hold on to that home. They're not going to allow that thing to fail. Because where are they going to go? I mean, they're going to say like, well, they're going to have to give up their house. Well, yeah, if they're forced to, if they have no other choice, right? But most people who have a house, I mean, if they're going to do whatever they can to hold on to it, they'll move down into the basement and rent out the upper half of it. All I guess I'm saying is just like people are going to desperately hold on to it. It's not like the toxic assets that were before. People who bought these houses with very little effort. Think about that. If you don't work hard for it, then it doesn't have any value. There's no value in things that come easy. Think about that. And so if all these houses were being given to people with no down payment, don't have to verify your income and stuff like that, it's easy, right? Things that come easy, they don't care, let it go, right? And they'll just let it go. But people who had to put down a lot of money, people who have worked hard, putting maintenance, putting upkeep into their house or something like that, they're going to hold on to that thing. It's only the people who didn't care, who didn't put anything into it, they're the ones who let things go. I work at Walmart and we decrease the size of the products by half and then charge double, not joking, and sales down 20-50 based on revenue, and that's with higher prices. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What you're going to find is that all those products that you've seen that have doubled up in price, you're going to find foreign competition start to come in as the distribution lines open up, and you're going to find other products that are going to compete with those that are going to be much cheaper than the original things that you had seen. I mean, it's just a matter of time before you start finding the competition of foreign production start to find its way back in again. Just-in-time delivery is by far the most efficient way and cheapest way of delivering products, and so anybody who is storing anything in warehouses is going to have to charge a lot of money for them. But you give it time, and that's what's going to eventually happen. Like, think about, like I brought up in the conversation with Peter about how the Federal Reserve is trying to kill the jobs market, and he disagreed with me. He says they're not trying to get rid of jobs, they're just trying to get rid of the consumer, right? And to me, everybody, okay. I mean, I can understand like that point of view if people were actually like savers or something like that. Like, people were like, "Ooh, man, that's really tough. I don't really want to like take out money or go into debt to buy that," or something like that. That's not what's going to hurt the consumer. What's going to hurt the consumer is hurting people in their cost of living, right? Because that's the consumer. In order to, you have to lower their standard of living in order for them to not buy anything. Everybody, if people are at the end of the month, have no money, right? That's the case right now. And so in order for the Federal Reserve to say, hey, we don't need you spending all that money, right? And it was like, but we spend all the money by the end of the month. Like, this is the way we live, right? Because we really don't even have enough money as it is. So if you take away their income, then they won't spend as much. And so it's not that you can't hurt the consumer by raising interest rates. You can only hurt the consumer by taking away their money. And by taking away their money, I mean their employment. That's the difference that I see. I mean, everybody kind of looks at it and says interest rates rise and they don't want to buy a car. Well, yeah, that's true, but that's not the consumer. I mean, the consumer might buy a car, but I mean, the consumer's out there buying stuff, going out there and spending money, going to the movies, taking vacations and going to the club. right? Doing stuff. Like, that's the consumer. And the only way that you can hurt that person is to take away their employment. That's it. Because they spend all their money. Every bit of it. There's nothing left, you know. All right. Working on converting our master room into a studio. Might do short-term rental, but setting it up so we always have the space ready to rent out if we need it for income. Now, that's a good way of going about it. Yeah. The economy is not like '08. Yeah, that's true. That is nothing like '08. Are you still buying Bitcoin after Peter Schiff's interview? Yeah, I am not. Listen, Peter is an awesome dude. Like, he is a smart guy, and I am not one to, like, people were like, man, I wanted to see you debate Peter Schiff. And I'm like, are you serious? I mean, I don't want my ass handed to me. You know, like, I'm going to debate Peter Schiff. Right? That ain't going to happen. But I have my beliefs, and I have my point of view. And I have, like, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with everything that Peter was saying. Like, I mean, like I said, just what I said about, like, the Federal Reserve and how they're going to try and hurt the consumer. They're not going to hurt the consumer by raising interest rates. They're going to hurt the consumer by taking away their job. That's how they're going to hurt the consumer. You know, and that's something that Peter didn't agree with me on, and I'm going to stick to that. Like, I mean, I understand what it is to be working class individual, you know? I mean, if you take my YouTube away, the revenue from YouTube, and I am, like, I'm screwed, right? I'm just like everybody else. And the fact that I have it, believe me, I'm very, like, appreciative of it. I mean, I take care of, like, as much business as I can in order to try and, you know, pursue farther with, you know, with this whole thing. But, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are delusional about what the average American has to go through. And I'm not. Like, I lived that way for 45 years. I mean, it's only been recently that I've ever had any kind of, like, real ability to do anything in my life. And even having something like this coat, like, the things I appreciate in life are so simple. You know, like, I like having a comfortable pair of shoes. I like really good apples. Like, apples are my favorite, right? I like being in an environment that's mellow with, like, calm music, and I like that kind of thing. Right? I don't care about material possessions. They're not, like, I'm not into it. Like, I don't like, toys are kind of fun. I like, checking things out, but I don't have this desire to have, like, a bunch of material possessions in my life. It's just not in me. I don't know what it is. I just don't care about that kind of thing. But enjoying my environment, enjoying, like, peace around, that's, like, what I really enjoy, and that's what I like to try and go for, So everybody has something different in their life, but that's me. Alright. 100% cool that Peter was on. And to test him, why? He deals with that all the time. He doesn't have to this. We should all appreciate him. Oh, I appreciate him all the time, Yeah. I mean, everything. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I thought the interview was great. I thought it was a conversation that, I mean, he was, like I said, I mean, he gave me some very thoughtful replies, and I was very, I was ecstatic, actually, that he did the interview with me. If going to get really tough, rent out the house, cover the mortgage, rent out the basement to cover your food, live in an RV out back. They won't drop in value. Fixed price and fixed income. Bonds don't cash flow. Thoughts on oil producers? I don't know, man. Like, everybody told me that oil was going to go to $500 a barrel and nobody was going to be able to buy anything. And I was just like, no, if oil continues to go up. And I said this, I think it was in an Instagram video or something like that. But somebody had asked me about oil. And I said just that. I said, if oil prices continue to go up, then people would stop buying it, and you would end up finding that dragging down the economy, and the less people buying oil, then the prices start to come down. As far as, like, where that's headed, I couldn't tell you. Like, I think I mean, I think there's going to be a huge push into electric vehicles. I think that's going to be like the biggest, like, you know, industrial move like coming into the future, where people are going to be like, man, nobody saw this coming. I mean, it's obvious right now that there is going to be some rise. There's going to be like the electric vehicle companies going to be like the .com thing, you know. I mean, that's kind of what I see. um but as far as like the oil producers, I just don't see like how oil is going to not be consumed. Like, there is by far no other way of distributing energy around this nation and to production of like agriculture and stuff like that than there is oil. It's just by far the most efficient way of going about it right now. Will that change over time? Sure. I mean, eventually, you know, you give it some time, and things will eventually change, and maybe even go into electric farming equipment on a massive scale. But right now, it's going to be oil. It's going to be diesel that does it, and and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So, I mean, if you're thinking like long haul, for like something you want to buy for the grandkids so that they have something when they're growing up, but as far as like in the next few years or something like that, you know, you can throw your dart at at the EV companies and see which one of those might just kill it or something like that. But for the most part, I don't know. I don't see oil producers doing really awesome, you know, through all this. But I also don't see where they can go anywhere. I mean, there's still going to be a huge demand for it. I don't know if that answers the question. All right. Okay. Where are we at? Okay, here we go. If you feel like uncertainty about any situation with mortgage, you want to also learn about jingle mail, which can be one solution, at least in some states, for people in debt. Huh. Jingle mail? Sounds scammy. All right. Just by the name of it. I like how Peter explained clearly how inflation is actually how the government taxes us. Yeah, that's true. So 4.7% when inflation is 7.1%, how is that good investment? So I mean, it's not. So when prices get high, just to try to survive till the tide turns, or end up hungry and homeless. So I don't know. Like, here's the thing. I was talking to my friend Susie about it earlier, and the more I realized that the separation between classes, the separation between the rich and the poor, the ever-growing wedge that is driven between that is a cycle that doesn't reverse. Like, people are like, man, we need the politicians to step forward and do something about it. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't matter what they do, right? And so if you're dependent on that, or the idea of somebody doing that, it isn't going to happen. You have to figure it out for yourself, that there's property owned. Okay, there's only think about it from his perspective. There's three people who live independently of the state: the prince, right, which ends up being like Congress, I guess, you know, because they don't really do anything for you. The property owners, and the capitalists who invest into that system. And so those are the three people who live independently of anything else out there. And if you're not one of those people, then you are supporting the elitist that is out there. And if you take out a mortgage, then that is also supporting the elitist out there. At some point, you have to be the property owner, or you have to be the person who is in charge of that property, who is capitalizing on it, the capitalist, right? Those are the people who live independently of the state. Or you can try and go and be one of those Congress people and believe in that stuff, and then, you know, then you can live independently of the state too, because you really don't do anything for them. You know, you don't produce nothing. So, all right. What's gonna keep them from walking? How did you go about booking Peter for the interview? I asked. I just asked. You know, that's another thing. Like, I've been trying to explain to people, like, think about this, guys. If you had watched my channel from the very beginning, from the very beginning, from the very first day that I put out a video, I have not changed who I am. I'm not anybody who is any differently than you are. I am just a guy who got obsessed over economics, and yeah, I can kind of babble on about it, but I'm not anybody who is any different. And there was a time in my life that I said to myself, and I said to my wife, I said, you know, there's a couple of things that I would really like to do. One of them is I would really like to meet Ron Paul. All right. Now, I didn't get to meet him, but I got to speak on stage to the same audience. And that was also one of my goals, was to get on stage and speak to an audience. I couldn't believe it when both those things happened. When I realized that when you put something in your head, and then you start taking the steps towards that direction, and you don't really see it any other way. You think about it right before you go to bed, you think about it as soon as you wake up, and you put that in your head, that this is the steps that I'm going to start heading towards. And you don't stop, right? You know, you're going to get all kinds of discouragement along the way that says, like, man, you shouldn't be doing this, you know, and you're going to have people saying that, you know, you shouldn't be doing it or whatever, and there's going to be all kinds of stuff. But if you just don't see it any other way, right, well, then you start moving in that direction, right? And, you know, even like anything that's out there, you know, asking Peter, like, if I was nervous about it, if I didn't feel that it was worthy, if I didn't feel the channel was worthy of it, if I didn't, you know, think of, like, if I didn't take this thing seriously, if I didn't take my videos seriously, then Peter never would have been on the show. He never would have been here, right? But it was because I knew, like, in me, that I wanted this. Like, I mean, not just I wanted it, that it was something that I was going to have at some point in my life, right? I don't know when it was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to be the other day. Like, that was completely out of the blue. Like, I had sent him an email a while ago, and all of a sudden, bang, this is like, hey, we can do this Wednesday. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, let's do it Wednesday. Like, didn't even prepare, didn't even have any questions to ask. Like, I literally, like, I wrote down, like, literally some topics to talk about. I took notes while we were talking just so I could keep up. But I mean, literally, I wrote down, like, I want to talk about the Fed funds rate, housing, gold, dollar strengthening, UBI, CBDC. That's what I wrote down for my notes for questions that I was going to ask them. I just wanted to make sure that I was, like, staying in line, you know, to keep things up. And that was it. Like, to be honest with you, it was quite a very, like, surreal moment, really. I didn't even believe it was happening. And when I got into the conversation with him, it was just like any other, but it was like talking with anybody else. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel like it shouldn't happen. I felt very comfortable about the whole thing. It was awesome. It was great. Okay, when they raise rates, less people buy, which will force companies to cut jobs. 3 million versus 700 billionaires. We got this. Investors bought up 25% of the single-family homes in the last year. If they start to have trouble making a profit as prices go down, I would expect a lot of supply to hit the markets. Okay, why did they buy those houses? Did they buy them for the price of it, or did they buy it so they could rent them out? Think about it. It's the rental income. There's no return on capital investment right now. You're going to get a 4% return on U.S. Treasuries, right? You're going to get, you know, I mean, where is it that you can get a return on capital investment? That's the thing. You got to have, like, some kind of return on it. And if you're finding the return in rental incomes because the rental income is high, then that's where the investors are going to start headed towards. I mean, it's like, it's almost, you got to see, like, it's almost as like they don't even have any other choice. It's like they have to go into rental income because there's no other place that they can get a return on their money right now. And so the more they do that, the more it drives it up, until eventually the flow of money stops coming in. And that's where people are, like, kind of confused, I think, right now, with the idea that the Federal Reserve has lifted interest rates and have turned off the flow of money. You have to think about all the money that's been in the system that hasn't come out yet. Like, it's not like all of a sudden it's just like the money is back to where it was back in 2008. and that we're going to have a return to houses back there. The money supply is incredibly elevated right now. All right. Well, you guys are talking. I don't know. I got to find a question in here. Okay. Marriott bought a home located down the street from me, rented it out Airbnb, and now it's for sale. The stock market has changed significantly ever since the average person made a little bit over of money during AMC and GME. Now I feel like it's almost impossible to profit consistently. Bonds are paying more. They know something we don't know. Cunningham. People bought rental properties at the bottom of the barrel, cap rates, and can't survive rate rises and rent deflation. Okay, so that's the thing. Go and look at that chart. Look at the rent deflation. That's what I want to see. I want to see where it is in history that you have seen a significant downturn in rent. Like any time in history. Go and look at that Federal Reserve chart that I leave down in the description for you guys. There was a year where the rents went flat, and now you can say, yeah, my area, I saw rental income go down. Yeah, you might have. Like, there might be some locations, there might have been some particular, houses or markets or whatever that saw some significant, downward trends in rent. But for the average across the board fall in rental, it didn't happen. It went sideways for a little over a year. Other than that, it has been nonstop continual rise in rents throughout history. I mean, think about it. It was just like, I bring up that Roman tablet that during that documentary that I was watching of the average Roman and how they lived. And I think about that carving. It was some average dude who scratched into a marble tablet about the conditions of his life and what he was most concerned about. And he scratched, he etched into this damn stone. He said, he was saying, like, what is it that he was going to do for his next meal? What happens if he gets sick? And how does he pay the rent? These were his three concerns. And this was way back in the Roman days. Now, think about it. Has these concerns ever went away? Has anybody ever not been concerned about these three things? Right? How are they going to eat? What happens if they get sick? Who's going to take care of them, And, how do you pay the rent? Where are you going to live? These are always have been and always will be the most major concerns of everybody. And there's very little doubt in my mind that that's going to change. Like, there's never going to be a condition when everybody goes, man, these houses are so affordable. Finally, we all get to live peacefully. I mean, does that sound like any time in history that we have ever experienced? Yeah, there was a time in history where the average income for, a man could take on a wife, have kids, and his income could totally supply that life. It doesn't happen like that anymore. It's not going to go back to that, right? So anybody who's thinking that it's going to go back to that is delusional, right? It's only going to go the other way. It's only going to get worse. If that's what you consider it. I mean, some people don't consider this worse. Some people consider this the best time to ever be alive, and that the opportunities right now are greater than they ever have been, and people who are taking advantage of it are excelling. So, I mean, it just depends on how you look at things, right? Right on. Did I miss a super chat? Cool. Thank you, Vinny Grant, for the $1.99. Happy New Year. Do you think silver will skyrocket? I think silver can skyrocket. Now, whether or not it does skyrocket is going to be a whole other story, because really what it comes down to is that I have very little doubt in my mind that the paper silver market is not going anywhere. Now, if there does come a time, especially here in the future with all the EV things that are happening, and just the amount of demand for computers, electronics, robots, all that stuff, it's going to demand silver. There's going to be a huge silver demand for it. Now, there's hardly anybody out there who goes and physically purchases silver. Like, very little out there. People like us, that understand the monetary system, people who want an insurance policy, people who take on that physical possession of silver and understand the reasonings why they do that. we're different. Like there's very few of us out there who are actually taking on physical silver. But if you go and look at like the actual purchasing of silver, it's usually done mostly through industrial purposes, right? They're building something and they need a little tiny piece of this for their cell phone or computer or whatever it is that they're building. Now, if there ever came a time when they went to go get that physical silver and they couldn't do it, then it doesn't matter what's happening in the paper market, right? Then people will start paying a much higher price for it. And you're starting to see that kind of take place right now when you see the spot price as much as it is. Like I remember you could get silver 35 cents over spot price. Like it was practically spot price. And now, I mean people would like, they would kill to have 35 cents again. I mean, I don't even know what some of the premiums are out there, but they're outrageous. I mean, it's just incredible. So some people get some really good deals. Other people, they're just picking up a little bit all the time. Doesn't matter what the premium is because they just want that physical possession of it. Now, everybody buys silver for another reason. But if you're looking for physical silver to really go up in price, I would have to think that it would be a scenario like that, where there's an industrial, need for it. And those people can't find the physical out there. Like if they physically can't get it, then they will start paying any price for it, and then you would see silver start to skyrocket. Other than that, I just think that they keep the price so suppressed through the paper manipulation game. I don't see that coming to an end. I don't know. Yeah. All right. If you don't know 2021 was bottom of the barrel cap rates, you have no idea how reinvesting works. No offense. I love how people bring up national numbers when a rental property is a single address, not a smart comparison. Yeah, very true. I've owned and leased residential rental properties for 22 years. I've never had to reduce my rental price. The only time they aren't generating income is when someone moves out and I do repairs. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I found out there. For like I did talk to a couple of people who did lower their rents right after the great financial crisis. Like but I'm thinking they were probably a little too eager to try and get somebody back into the rental, into that piece of property again. Excuse me. Just because, I don't know, there was so much noise happening at the time. It was, I think that's probably what happened, is they ended up jumping the gun a little bit. Hey, did I get another super chat down there? Yeah, there it is. Cool. Thank you very much, Frank, for the $3 Canadian. All right. Hey, Sean, I think 2008 Obama gave out $8,000 to new buyers. What assets are cheap right now to invest in? Cash seems like a good deal till a confirmation and pivot. Okay, so I did 2 interviews just recently, one with George Gammon and the other one with Peter Schiff, and both those guys did not seem to think that the Federal Reserve was going to be lowering interest rates. Right? So I don't think there's going to be a pivot. So long as there's not a pivot and the interest rates stay elevated, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be in cash, because I believe the asset prices are going to be coming down, or at least not going up during that time. Here's another thing. The Federal Reserve and the Fed funds rate is a delayed reaction. It takes 6 months to a year before the lifting of Fed funds or the adjusting of Fed funds has a chance to impact the economy. Right now, we are just entering. We are right now at neutral, going into restrictive economy, right? So, it was neutral. It's now shifting into restrictive, right? Because they don't know exactly where neutral is. They think it's somewhere around 2.5%, right, on the Fed funds level. Well, if you go back and you look at the Fed funds, they have lifted them so fast and so aggressively that it's hard to see where it was that 6 months to a year ago was as far as the Fed funds level is. But you have to think, we have been in basically a neutral economy, now moving into a restrictive economy. Things are about to get, very tough out there. And I'm telling you, even working retail, of course it is, the middle of winter, and working retail and a building supply isn't exactly like the most busiest time of year. But I can tell you, like, the phone calls are a lot less. There's a whole lot less traffic coming through. It's getting pretty obvious out there that there is a slowdown happening within the economy. my friend Lynn. So it's pretty obvious that it's happening, and that there's going to be a slowdown within the consumer. And if the consumer slows down, you're going to start seeing a slowdown in everything that else is happening out there because we're a consumer-based economy. All right, another 10 or up to $10 there, $4.99. Thank you very much for any grant for the $4.99. Another thing that can happen if the dollar collapses and the institutions run to gold, that all be another reason for silver bull run. Okay, well, okay. I would agree with that. I would. Now, we have to understand, why is it that the dollar is going to collapse? That means people are getting out of the dollar. They don't want it. And we've talked about this one a couple of times. Like, how is it that that environment is going to look when people go to get out of the dollar? They're going to have to get out of their contracts. They're going to have to get out of their dollar-denominated debt. Like, as long as they have, okay, think about it. As long as you have a car payment that's due in dollars, then you have to get dollars in order to pay your car off. Or else, you, like the person who owns your car, at least the note on your car, they want to be paid in dollars. So you have to get dollars to do that. Well, that's the same for everybody else out there who took out dollar-denominated debt. And so if they want to get out of the dollar, they're like, man, screw this dollar. I'm tired of it. I don't want to earn money in dollars. I don't want to have this dollar-denominated debt. Well, you have to get the dollars first. So you have to earn enough dollars to pay off your debt, and then get out of the dollar altogether, saying, okay, I don't want to earn no more dollars. Like, it's stuck to you. Like, you can't get out of it, And as long as you have other nations around the world who are going hungry because they need dollars in order to eat, then that's another reason why they're going to stay with the dollar. It's because if they're hungry and that's the only thing that they can use to buy dollars, then that's what they're going to use. It's just, I mean, it's sad to say, but that's what it is. Look over at Sri Lanka. They damn near ran out of dollars going hungry because they couldn't afford the food as the dollar was strengthening, and they had less income coming in during the whole COVID thing. It was like kind of a sad, not kind of, it was a very sad story to hear. But that's one that we're going to hear more of, especially if the Federal Reserve continues down the path, which they are going to do, and that's the lifting of interest rates. I mean, it's going to be King Dollar destroy the world. If people get out of the dollar, they aren't going to have any other place to go to, because they're sure as hell ain't going to trust some other sovereign nation, especially things like China or Russia or Brazil, South America. Like, these are not nations that are going to be trustworthy enough to have a world reserve currency. So it's going to be gold. Gold has the only other reserve status that could ever possibly work other than the dollar. So the dollar is it. And until, like, everybody decides simultaneously to give up the dollar all at once, like a real cunning, like, strategic event to take place like that, there's no way the dollar's going anywhere. There's just none. Like, it's not going to happen. And yeah, there might be like rising tides and shifts and, all kinds of stuff that happen during this. And yeah, you're going to see, like, at times the dollar get very weak, probably weaker than people were anticipating, but it's also going to get much stronger than what anybody had ever anticipated, especially if people do want to truly get out of the dollar. If they truly want to get out of it, you're going to see it rise faster and higher than anybody had ever anticipated. People are going to say stuff like, oh, you should be in the dollar. It's the greatest thing you should ever been in. It's better than, having gold or whatever. People are going to get into it, and then it's going to be over because nobody's going to be taking out any more debt. And in those dollar-denominated debt, it's going to disappear. They're going to move into something else, and the United States will lose its world reserve currency status. All those dollars will come rushing back to the United States. We're not manufacturers of anything, and we're going to sit here all in poverty because of it. It's the Cantillon effect. Just go and read the increase and decrease to money in the state and think about it on today's level. It's happening, right? So yeah, be in gold and silver, right? But how long is it going to take to get there? A long time. Lady yelling at the dogs. All right. Any advice for someone in the mortgage loan officer service? So is that what you do, Corey? You're like in the mortgage? It's okay. I don't know, man. Just like anything out there, there's never been a time in history that there wasn't a mortgage being written to somebody, right? So it's going to be a hell of a tough game for you. There's not going to be a whole lot of refinancing taking place, and there's not a lot of people out there who are going to be taking out mortgages on these expensive homes. People who are going to be buying these homes are going to be people who are buying them because they're looking for a return on their capital investment, and they're going to find it inside of the rental incomes. So I don't know, man. That's going to be a tough game to be in. I don't really have any advice for you except that there is mortgages being written, and you're going to have to be at the top of your game. Hey, UE, I hear you talk about having your mind set on money all the time. My question is, how do you balance family? Okay, bro, that's a really good question. I would rather be middle class with a great family relationship, and I envy that thought, bro. You know, um, it's a tough game, man. Like, try not being able to provide anything for your family. Think about that. Right? Think about watching how you would never be able to, like, say, go eat at a restaurant. Something simple like that. Ice cream, don't even think about it. Taking the family, no. Going to the zoo or a museum, you might get that once, ever. Right? Think about that. Okay. So now you figured out a way that you don't have to do that. You can move on beyond that. Right? But it takes a lot, right? And if you give it just half the effort, it won't work. You have to give it all the effort in order to make it work. So where's the balance when you either have to give it all or none? Right? It's not an easy game. People look at this and say, oh man, you got it so lucky, you got it so easy and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I put myself in a position in which that I don't have to stress about a bill. Like, I can pay the light bill. That's really cool, right? There was a time in my life I couldn't do that. That bill went on top with all the rest of them. Like, that was my life for the most part, right? So, when you don't have the abilities and then now you figured it out, but what got you there is something that you can't back off, right? You can't turn away from it and say, hey, I'm just going to give this half effort. Well, it doesn't work that way. If you give it half effort, it deteriorates, it goes away. It's a constant push to go forward to get more, and if you don't do that, then it falls apart. So yeah, it's a feeling of very much being like you're stuck, right? And I mean, believe me, I would much rather be stuck here than there. And again, I mean, I would much rather be stuck here than there. But yeah, as far as, like, figuring out a balance, sometimes there isn't a balance. You look at anybody who is high performance out there, there's very few people out there who are high performance who have, like, this outstanding family life, who are just like, you don't see that like that. You see somebody who is stressed out, somebody who is, like, constantly thinking of, like, what it is that's going to be, the events for the next week, the next day, whatever's going to happen as far as their business goes. I'm not saying that's the person that everybody should be, or what, but that's how it happens. They don't have a balanced life, right? And it doesn't work like that. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that people have figured it out so they can have the best of both worlds, right? Not everybody gets the best of both worlds. Some people, like, they don't get to do that. And that's okay, right? Because sometimes one world's better than the other world, and that's the way it is. But no, you're touching on it, man. Be careful about applying economic textbook models to the real world. No, don't be, right? In fact, apply all economic models to the real world. Take everything you can. People say, I don't think about, like, I'm not taking in this Austrian economics theories or whatever. Why not? Take on all theories. Take on every possible theory you can ever possibly imagine, and let your own assumptions and gut feelings tell you what to do. Like, I mean, that's how you're supposed to do it. Denying yourself information, or saying that these aren't possibilities, that's dangerous, right? It's not dangerous taking in information. It's dangerous believing or putting too much hope, right? That's what people say, like, don't you believe Peter Schiff? And I was just like, yeah, I believe Peter Schiff. I believe Peter believes exactly what he believes, and I have my beliefs, he has his beliefs, I believe he believes what he believes, it's like, there's no arguing any of that stuff. And I mean, who's right or wrong, time will tell on any of that stuff. And theories are just that. They're, we all have them. I mean, nobody can predict the future. We look at the information that we compiled together. We think of like what the cause and effects from them can be, come up with our ideas. Yeah, right on. Thank you, Corey, for the $4.99. Here's a happy new year to you, Uneducated Economist, and everyone in the chat too. Well, thank you very much for the $4.99, man. That's really cool of you. I respect and appreciate that I haven't seen a change in you. Well, I mean, I have changed. I mean, you guys got to understand that I'm not even like the person that I used to be. I mean, there's a lot of changes that happened. It's hard to describe them all, but even today I want to be different than I was before. I'm trying to change all the time. Like, just even taking on something as simple as just reading every day is a change for me. It's difficult to try and get into that. But I feel that if I started reading every day, then I would have just that much more stuff to talk about. But I haven't changed as far as like what my goals, ambitions for life are. I mean, when I started this channel, I wanted, a channel that I could talk economics with and, make a little bit of money from. That was it. Like, I didn't really change anything about that. Like, that's what I still want to do, Peter Schiff has predicted 9 out of the last 1 crashes. Like Bruce Lee said, we have to be like water, able to move with the situation. Yeah. If you pour water into a bottle, you become the bottle. UE, would you invest in paper shares in mining company or buy physical gold and silver? And yes, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to really invest into the metals market, then yeah, that's what you would want to do, is you'd want to invest in the miners. I mean, buying physical to me is not really an investment, it's a speculation. You're just planning on selling it to somebody else in the future. But if you're buying a mining company, well, you're investing in that company. They might be good miners, they might be in a good location, they might have a reason that you are thinking that company is going to do quite well. But just like any other company, that's the reasons why you're buying it. You're buying into that company because you believe in them and what they have going on, their operations. When you buy physical, you're just planning on selling that to another person in the future. Or you might be taking on the idea that, I want to have a bartering tool or something like that. There's a lot of reasons why you might want to have the physical. Me personally, it's the insurance policy. It's something that's outside of that, third party. I don't have to worry about an envelope showing up in the mail. I don't have to worry about anything that goes on as far as the economy. It's just like a physical item that is that's in my own possession. And that's what's cool about having the physical. But other than that, I don't really see it as much of an investment, because the premiums that you end up paying on them are so high. And then, or the premiums that you lose, the when you sell them off to like a coin dealer or pawn shop. So as far as like the investment part of things, yeah, then you would want to be in miners. That's really the only place that's a decent investment when it comes to precious metals. But I don't really invest in miners. I mean, I don't. And I shouldn't say I don't really. I have some mining shares, but I don't like physically throw a lot of money at that. I did a while ago, and there might come a time when I will. But really, I am like a lot of people are waiting for a housing market crash. I'm really waiting for a stock market to turn around when it comes to the spread between the 30-year and the 5-year treasuries. Like, I don't know where the bottom's going to be. I don't know how far down, how far up, nobody knows that stuff. Like, nobody can figure that out. But, when there's a couple of things that are said that you never hear again, you never hear really anybody ever talking about it, then those are some of the things that I end up holding on to really tightly until I see it again. And that is that Greenspan, Alan Greenspan, saying that, when they asked him about the inverted yield curve between the 2-year and 10-year, and he said that's a great indicator of a recession. And he says, but what he likes to look at is the spread between the 5-year and 30-year. And when you see that spread growing, it's corporate management's willingness to invest. Now, at the time when I heard that, I really didn't understand what it meant, but I took it to heart and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to listen to that. Like, I'm going to pay attention to that spread. Now, I saw that thing shrinking long before the 2-year and 10-year did, and it inverted. And I did a video talking about the inverted yield curve between the 5-year and 30-year that hardly anybody else was even mentioning in the mainstream media news. And then it was like a month later, or a few weeks later, everybody started to talk about the inverted yield curve. So that 5-year, 30-year seems to be pretty important, and I'm going to keep an eye on that. So when that spread starts to widen, that's when I'm going to start getting into the stock market again. So until then, I'm not really buying anything, including the mining shares. I'm not into it right now. Not the stock market, not anything. Cash is the only place that I really see being, and it's for a very short time. Now, I mean, a lot of people are like, aren't you worried about like losing your money to inflation? And I'm thinking, okay, well, just think about it for a second here. You say you're going to get any kind of return on your money, right? You want to get at least a little tiny piece of return on your money because it's better than sitting and cashing loose in it all. So let's just say, take something very simple. For example, you're going to do 5,000, or say you have $1,000, right? $1,000, and you want to make some sort of return on it. You're going to get 5%. So you're going to put it in the bank, and at the end of the year, you're going to end up with $50. Right? $50. So was it worth it to tie up your $1,000 that you may have had an opportunity somewhere along the line, right? That you could have used that $1,000 for something, right? A buying opportunity somewhere in there. But instead you gave it up so that you could get $50 by the end of the year? Like, I would rather just like not give a shit about the $50 and then have that buying opportunity somewhere along the lines. And that's really what I see over the next year. Like, I'm not talking like holding on to cash for like 20 years or something like that. That would be ridiculous. But right now we're going into a situation in which the Federal Reserve is going into a monetary tightening, right? That means they're pulling money out of the system. People out there are abandoning the dollar. They don't want the dollar, and that's going to cause the dollar to strengthen as they have to get the dollars in order to extinguish their debt. This is going to cause dollar strengthening to happen, and when this happens, it's going to cause a lot of people to not be able to afford to make their debt payments. If they can't afford to make their debt payments, they're going to start selling off their assets in order to start making those debt payments or to get out of those debts or whatever it is they need to do. These are your buying opportunities. This is where the blood in the streets is going to happen. So I don't know how that's going to look, what it's going to be like. Who knows, right? But if you're not in cash and you have tied your money up in a U.S. Treasury or in a money market account or a CD or something like that, I mean, money market, you could probably get it out pretty quick. But CDs and stuff like that, you have to generally keep those things for a certain amount of time, and you might miss out on your opportunity. All right. Oh, thank you, infamous NYC, for the $10. I'm in the market for farmland with structure on it. Every time I come across what I think is a good deal and I'm like, market will come down, it gets bought up. So I'm not waiting anymore. I will buy. I don't blame you right there. And especially when it comes to farmland, because, over the next couple of years, I think the price of food is going to go so damn expensive that people are not going to even care about new cars or TVs or couches or anything else about how cheap they are. All they're going to care about is where it is they're going to get their next meal. And it's something that has always taken place, right? As far as like hunger is the number one driver of everybody's motivations out there. If you're not hungry, then you're not eager. But if you're hungry, you're going to let the government do whatever they need to do in order to get you food. Hey, thank you, Gonzo, with the Shanzo? Thank you for the $20. Really appreciate it. Prosperous year to all. Well, very cool of you, man. Thank you. Thanks, Gonzo. Okay. Adjustable, is that ARM loans? Adjustable rate mortgages loans are in countdown to... All right. Mike, pretty cool. The only card I have, 1933. Gouty. I don't know. I guess I don't know what they're talking about. All right. Home Depot founder article out today. Words of warning. I keep seeing it. Like, all these like big time names are coming out giving this warning signs, warning. And the more I see that, the more I believe that that is propaganda. That is, they're trying to drive the narrative out there. Now, I'm not trying to say that, everybody is just like, in this big giant conspiracy theory to try and, convince everybody. I'm just saying that once you have convinced yourself of it, you will find all the reasons that it'll happen, right? You will start to look for the evidence to confirm that belief, right? So all I guess I'm getting at is just like, while some people are confirmed in their belief about how there's going to be this huge crash, other people are going to be taking advantage of it. Okay, here's another thing. This is something else that I thought about. All right, look throughout history, all right, and in just intuitively just answer the question with like the most common sense you can. When was the best time to invest in the stock market? Before or after a recession? All right? I mean, it's a pretty obvious one. It's after the recession. We just went through the deepest, quickest recession in history. A lot of people don't even realize that the United States was in a recession during the pandemic. So let me ask you, if you went back through history and you looked at the couple of years right after the recession as your investment opportunity, why are we missing it right now? What would make it different about this time? Right? That's something that I find very interesting. It's like, I mean, you got all these things that are out there that give you all these reasons why there's going to be this huge market crash going into a recession, but yet we just went through one of the deepest, darkest recessions, quickest ones in history, got completely covered up, papered over massively, right? The bailouts, all the other stuff of the corporation, all that stuff took place. And so everybody's talking about the recession that's going to come, and I'm thinking, they already got bailed out. Like, the corporations got bailed out, everybody got their bailout. Like, you didn't have to go to work, you didn't have to pay rent, you didn't have to do any of that stuff. Everybody got their bailout already. Now the pain comes in. Now you have to suffer the consequences of that stuff. And so when people say, like, when I think about it, it's just like, when is the recession supposed to kick in? I'm thinking, no, you're already in it, right? This is the recession. This is the part that, that I don't think a lot of people are quite aware of, is that they already bailed us all out. And this is like the aftermath of that. This is where the slowdown, and everybody is just thinking that there's going to be this huge crash. No, the crash already got papered over. It's just not gonna boom, right? That's what it's not gonna do. But as far as crashing, where it was gonna crash into a whole pile of buyers, You ain't seen nothing yet, All right. I reload too. It's actually kind of fun to being so bored. Yeah, I used to reload. Where are you? Okay, 7-year cycle, and we are 1 year in. Money on the sidelines waiting. That's the thing. Like, if I didn't know so many people, if I didn't hear about so many people talking about how they're just waiting in the sidelines, waiting for this housing prices to come down. Meanwhile, rent keeps going up. And, it's just like, I'm like, where's that going to come from? Like, I could understand if there was a massive build taking place. Like, all of a sudden, there's like all these builders out there just blasting out houses from every direction. I could understand if there was just like, a lot of people want to talk about the demographics, like, the older population dying off. Yeah, but that doesn't happen overnight. They tried to. There was the opportunity for that to take place, but it didn't really happen, right? So these are the things that I look for, is like the inventory rise. And I just don't see how that's going to happen. Unless they have like a major rise in unemployment, and that unemployment causing people not to be able to make their house payment or a rental payment, and then seeing the housing market crashing that way. I just don't see that taking place. Not yet. Like, could it? Sure, but it's not happening as of yet. As someone trying to sell their house, I will rent it before lowering the price anymore. It's already very reasonable. Yeah, and I think about, like, even in the year that I've been in my house, watching, and I know a lot of people like argued you can't use Zillow or whatever. Sure, okay, fine. Take whatever percentage off you want off of that Zillow estimate that they put on there. It's still incredibly high. And the amount that would have to come down on my house in order for me to go underwater is such an extreme amount. I would rent it out. In fact, I could rent it out for such a profit right now that I might even consider that if I could find another opportunity to, say, get into something that's like a duplex, right? Rent out my house and move into a duplex and then not pay rent anymore if I could do something like that. Or pay half the rent, or not rent, but mortgage payments. You know, I mean, I'm not denying myself anything that's going to possibly be out there. You save a lot of money fixing your own vehicle. You know what you save even more money is if you buy a $500 car. All right. So, it's kind of funny. Like, I bought a $500 car and a $1,200 truck, right? And I don't think I've put maybe $1,000 between tires and alternators, batteries, stuff like that. I don't think I put more than $1,000 into the two vehicles. So for, what was it, 17 plus another 1,000, $2,700. I've driven two cars, two vehicles for, how long have I had the Toyota? 3-4 years now. And I can't tell you how much money I must have saved off of not making payments, not making full coverage insurance payments, all the stuff, the maintenance that goes into these newer vehicles and stuff like that. I mean, it's quite expensive. And, there's an article that I have posted, like, I don't know, a long time ago. But we talked just about that. You want to be rich, drive a POS. And there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, I'm talking to a guy who bought a $92,000 Denali. And I'm thinking, you paid you signed a deal for $92,000 on a vehicle to drive it around. I'm thinking, the way I do it, I could buy 100 vehicles, right, for that, and wreck one once a month for 10 years, or practically, right? Like, I could just go through them once a month and still not, because the interest payments that he makes on it, I still wouldn't be, through all those vehicles. It doesn't make any sense. It just does not make any sense to do that. And it's not like this, I mean, I don't know, maybe you can't afford it. I don't think you can, but it doesn't make it, like, I don't understand it. Like, I would be embarrassed to do something like that. I mean, unless I have millions and millions of dollars, that it would be like, yeah, it'd be cool to drive a Denali around and, look all cool or whatever in my new fancy truck. But unless it's something like that that's going on in my life, I would be completely embarrassed to be driving something like that. Like, I am, and what's weird is I'm not embarrassed to drive something like this. Actually, I'm pretty proud to be driving something like this. What does that say about a lot of mentalities out there? That's anyway. All right. I like buying cars for $50,000-$70,000 and then they are worth more 5 years later, like the resto mods I have. Yeah, okay, well, take the one time in history that has ever happened and apply that for the rest of your life and see how well that works out for you. All right. You finally realize buying a new car isn't worth it. Yeah. I mean, there is the thing for, like, if you are going to be in your car a lot. Like, that's one thing. And it was just like, no, man, I spend, like, 20 hours a week in my vehicle. If that's the case, then you're probably going to want something nice because you're spending a lot of time in your vehicle, right? Or if you are just really, like, in absolute desperation for the reliability of it. Like, you cannot have something that is not reliable. Like, I understand that driving old vehicles, like, one day you might go out there and it doesn't start. That's why I have two, right? I have a backup, because that's what you have to have when you have, when you drive POS, is that at any given time they're going to break down and you never know when that, how that's going to happen. So, if you can't have that happen in your life, like, I can understand, then you would want something very reliable on that case. But I don't have that going on. Like, I don't condition my life to be that way. And if there is, like, I wouldn't drive either one of my vehicles to Portland on a regular basis. Like, I might take it to Portland once, just, because, but it wouldn't be something that I would rely on, because I know that if at some point that they're going to break down going that way, and I don't want to be stuck between here and 2 hours away from my house and I'm trying to figure out how it is that I'm going to, find transportation. So, yeah, I can understand reasonings for having a nicer, newer, reliable vehicle for it. But, you know, in my condition, no way. I am not ever going to buy something fancy until I have $2 million, you know? And even then, I don't even know if I'd do it, you know? They are selling people cars saying their job is the only credit they need. Student loans are going to come back. Those will be interesting. Yeah. You know, I don't know what the whole student loan thing is going to be. It just doesn't seem doesn't seem to me that they're going to be able to extinguish those things. Not on a massive scale anyway. A lot of people are convinced of it, and I could see how that would keep people like continuing to take out student loan debt, you know, if they're like in the belief that they're not going to have to pay it. One thing I've learned hanging out with rich people is that wealthy people buy modest cars and rich people buy expensive cars. Yeah. Most people never pay monthly on student loans. It's always deferred or wage-based payments. Will student loans come back? They pushed it off again. Crash not happening. Best time to buy is now or this coming year. I don't know. I'm certainly happy New Year, intelligent group, and good conversation. I'm out. Well, thank you, Gonzo. I really appreciate the super chat. That was very cool of you. Again, like, I don't know. I mean, I've given you guys my theory. If you haven't heard my theory on the student loan thing, I'll kind of blast it out for you real quick and try to explain it. And this is one of the reasons why I just don't see it happening, is because there's really nobody addressing it on this kind of level. Hey, all right, on Gonzo. So this is the thing about student loan debts, is that there's something called SLAB, student loan asset-backed securities. These student loan asset-backed securities are like a mortgage-backed security in a sense, in that they took a bunch of these student loans, they piled them up into a box and sold that box off to an investor, right? So they take these student loans, make a security out of it, student loan asset-backed security. Well, those student loan asset-backed securities, the government has those. They sit on the balance sheets of the government, of the United States government. Now, this is what's interesting about it, is that if you look at the United States government's balance sheet, right? So they have like assets and liabilities like everybody else. On the asset portion of the balance sheet, there is a financial portion of the assets, right? So you got this big balance sheet full of all these assets. There's a financial portion of that. Right? This is all the bonds, debts, everything else that they have. Of the financial portion of the government's balance sheet, half of that is made up of student loan asset-backed securities. So you have to think, this is a huge portion of the United States balance sheet, of their asset portion. If you were to take that and just pitched it out of there to say, okay, we're going to take these assets and just like, we don't have these. They don't exist anymore, right? Well, now you got a balance sheet that has way more liabilities than it has assets, and the credit rating of the United States goes to shit. So this is the reason why you can't just like make them disappear. What you have to do is purchase those student loan asset-backed securities, or like from taxpayers, or donations or something like that, like charity or something like that comes and buys these student loan asset-backed securities. But whatever happens, they have to do that in order to keep the credit rating from getting out of whack and the interest rates going, anyway. That's the reason why I don't believe that these student loans are going to go anywhere. It's because they can't. Like, how does the government physically do it, Unless they charge the people, which they, essentially that's what they're going to do anyway, so... You think a lot of kids bought houses and cars thinking they wouldn't have to pay their student loans? I don't know. I mean, anybody who thinks that I mean, there is the occasional time in which that somebody is relieved of their debts, right? All of a sudden people are like, whoa, I'm surprised by this. This is crazy. I got relieved of my debts. That's like a carrot being dangled out there for other people to follow that idea. Right? They're like, oh man, if all my debts went away, that'd be so cool. I'm going to imagine my life being that way, that all my debts are just gone, right? And now I can conduct myself as if I didn't have these debts in my life, Like, that's the type of stuff that happens from these things. Don't believe it. There has never been a time, like, don't ever think they won't come after you for your debt. And I mean, they're just like, because if you don't believe it, then someday you're going to be like counting on the idea that it isn't going to happen, and then they're going to come up and say, hey, by the way, guess what? Guess what you don't get to do? It's because of all this, debt that you took off that you didn't take care of. You think a lot of kids, okay, we already went through that one. Okay, let's see here. No, kids have been watching Crash Bros videos for the last 7 years. All right, they sucked everyone into this La La Land, and it's come to a head. Why do they keep pushing back student loan payment? Any reason for it? I honestly think it's more about the idea of keeping that carrot dangling for them. Like, if you're a student, like, on the idea, it's just like, man, I don't know about taking out all the student debt. It seems to be a real burden to, like, everybody in my family who had taken on the student debt. It seems to be a big burden out there when you hear about it. I just don't know if I'm really interested in doing any of this stuff. But then you hear the story that it's going to all go away. Like, the student loan debt is going to just be, just going to be a wash. You don't have to worry about it. Well, maybe I will then, since I don't have to worry about making my debt payment, my student loan payment. Well, then maybe I will go ahead and, take out this student loan debt and go off to college and try and get a degree that I'm not going to use for anything. Because that's really what they want to do, is they just want to keep the flow of new buyers, and the new signers coming in. I am Doc and don't have as much either. Escape velocity soon. What's your choice for country or refuse? Let's see here. Is there any? Everybody's talking all-nighter. It doesn't matter what the housing price is, their same amount exists, and people keep breeding a lot and moving a lot. The tangible numbers beyond money matter most. Did someone get a new coat for Christmas? No, well, I didn't get it for Christmas, but I did buy it for myself because I never buy myself anything. So, it's a heated jacket, which is really nice. And I can tell you, I used to think stuff like this was kind of funny. Like, people who would buy it, I would be like, oh man, buying a heated jacket, just put on a hoodie or something like that. But this thing is really comfortable, and it's really nice having something as unique as having a heated coat. I mean, you go outside and yeah, it's chilly out, and it's okay, you can handle it. But then you have these warm elements going on your back and on your chest and everything, and it's just like, man, what a difference it is to just be out in the elements with this going on. Like, how much more comfortable is it to be in this environment? So I think about it like this, like wearing a nice pair of shoes or something else like that. I mean, if you're going to enjoy the place that you're going to be, and enjoy it the most you can, and wearing something that's comfortable and keeping you warm on such a level as this feels good, and I'm glad to have it. Housing prices will be unaffordable for most people, even if housing market falls. And I totally agree with that, and I think it's part of kind of what's happening right now. The divide between the rich and the poor is getting worse. I mean, that's not going to reverse, and I don't care who you vote for. That's not gonna. It doesn't matter. It's not something that people can politically change. It's the way that the money flows into the system, and it's not a matter of the banking system either. It's just a matter of the effects of new money coming into the system, whether it's gold and silver or fiat currency. It still has the same reactions. Like, the new money coming into a state does the same thing as when the Federal Reserve prints up money and injects it into the state. It's the same reactions that the people have. Now, you will find gold and silver standards being a much more stable for long-term pricing, But even then, you would find that you would have business cycles that would have boom and bust periods that would absolutely just destroy people, that they because they weren't prepared for the bust. They would get, irrational, exuberant minded when during the booming times, and then not know how to deal with the bust times. And this is what would happen when you had a gold standard: is you would have an accumulation of wealth that would eventually get redistributed, only to be reaccumulated again. And this would happen on a very consistent basis. I mean, they called it the business cycle for a reason. So when it came to, like, new money coming into the state, it's going to happen the same way. Now, whether it came, I mean, the effects of it is going to happen the same way, whether it's like a new mine, like Cantillon describes, like a new silver mine bringing new money into the state, or if it's the fiat currency coming in. The people getting that new money are going to go into luxuries. There's just no doubt about it. Even just buying something like a jacket that, is just like, that's a luxury item. As you're buying these luxury items, you're going to find that it starts competing with domestic manufacturers. And that's the reason why this United States is suffering so bad as it is because we really don't have a manufacturing base going on here. Yeah, we do manufacture stuff, but not like a lot of stuff that the rest of the world is going to buy from us. We buy the rest of the world's stuff and then we sell it to ourselves, and that's how our economy works, is that we end up loaning, or we used to loan money to the people and sell them stuff. Now we borrow money from the rest of the world and buy their stuff. And this is how this economy is now working. And once the money turns off and we stop buying the world's stuff, then we don't have any stuff inside of our own country to buy, and we start all falling into poverty. The only people who actually excel are the people who are bringing in the new foreign items that are being sold to, anybody who's buying luxuries. And then everybody else is sitting in poverty wondering what the hell happened. Sorry to be such a doomsdayer on that, but yeah. I'm concerned with locusts moving to Florida and ruining it. Seeing lots of Cali license plates lately. Huh. So many homeless people now. It's like everywhere I go, there's people laying outside businesses. It's hitting Austin and Denver significantly. Yeah, that's going to get worse. That's like, that's not going to get any better. And that's what's sad about it, is that you're going to find that it's going to be two classes: the people who have and the people who have not. And that's why I'm just like, I'm so adamant about, like, yeah, I bought this jacket. It's a luxury for me, but it feels good. It's like almost like a Christmas present to myself, to make me like, hey, dude, go do something good for yourself. Right. But it really is the people, when they get that new money, right? If they go into luxuries, then it's going to continue to happen. Right. What it's going to take is people not going into luxuries. It's going to take people going into reinvestment into, like, manufacturing back here into the United States for some reason, like, trying to do some sort of production, something that reinvests back here, that does some sort of purchasing here in the United States. This is very difficult for people to wrap their heads around, to try and do, because they want the cheapest thing in the world. Like, no matter what, like, it was just like, people were like, man, that's a really good idea to buy American. It's like, okay, here's the two products. They're almost exactly the same. One of them's $50 more than the other one. That's $50. Give me the cheap one, right? That's the way everybody is, right? There's almost nobody out there who is going to buy 100% American because they are that proud, right? That they are going to do it. I mean, there are some people who do, and I mean, that's awesome that they do, but there's not a significant amount of people who would do that in order to just, like, make the system just, like, reverse course. Otherwise, it's going to do what it's going to continue to do, and people are going to continue to dive into luxuries, and it's going to continue to separate the state. It's the way it's going to happen. So it's vitally important that you get on the correct side of the wedge. And if you have to drive a cheap car to do it, then that's what you have to do, right? To make sure that you have way more income than you have debt. And never to take on any debt that is going to not be something that is going to be, like, going to contribute back into an income for you. Good debt versus bad debt. Don't buy a fancy car with debt. Go and buy, take out debt to have some sort of rental income, like a return on your capital when you take out debt. Good debt versus bad debt. If people started behaving in these fashions and kept the money here in the United States, yeah, then okay, I would agree that we could find, a standard of living return where, you would find, like, the one income would work again and stuff like that. Ain't happening, right? None of that stuff's happening. I mean, I don't mean to be a doomsdayer about it, but you just kind of have to understand that this is the way the system is just going to go. It's a cycle to it. And you have to be on the right side of it, and understand that this is going to happen. If you're reliant on a politician, like you're going to hope for someday we're going to get the right administration in and then life is going to be awesome, you're done. You're done. You're not going to make it. Yeah. Do not count on any politician. They are not going to be there for you. I guarantee you that. I buy exclusively made in Mars. Yeah, I like it when I see a label that says it's made with global materials. I'm like, oh no shit, it's made with global materials. Where did we think you got the material from? The moon? I mean, come on. Of course it's global. All right. I'm not running. I'm coming down from New Jersey, but don't worry, I'm good for Florida. California has been good to me. Hope it don't fall into the sea. Sometimes you have to trust yourself. I ain't like anywhere else, or it ain't like anywhere else. Cheap labor is what all these major corps are all about. There will need to be some type of law put into place that provides incentives to move manufacturing back onshore. No, there doesn't. You can't put a law into place that corrects the situation, no matter what okay, there is a law. It's called tariffs, right? They're called, you can't do it. You can't put a law into place. Politicians are not going to come to save you from this, all right? See, this is what I'm trying to get at. Like, you can't do it. It's not a reversal that can happen. Right? It's like, think about it. Like, even if you were to think of just something as simple as the masks that we had talked about, the surgical masks, right? During the lockdown, we couldn't get surgical masks into the nation. This was a major problem, right? Lives were on the line if we didn't have surgical masks and everybody standing 6 feet apart to keep everybody from getting sick and dying, right? So surgical masks were a damn hot commodity here in the United States for a while. And the domestic manufacturers were not very prevalent here in the United States. The majority of surgical masks were coming from China, right? So now here in the United States, for national security reasons, we needed to invest more in domestic manufacturing of surgical masks. Now, this is not the way that profitable manufacturing is established. You don't say, we need it for national security reasons, now go to it, right? That's not profitable. That is going to cost taxpayers, or it's going to cost tariffs, or it's going to cost something, because the profitable manufacturing of surgical masks come from China, right? Now, if you have a time in which that you don't have the surgical mask coming into the nation because you've done severed the supply chain, well, then now the domestic manufacturers have all the room in the world to profit from, because you have a limited supply coming in because of that severing of the supply chain. Well, this is really awesome for the investment that went into the domestic manufacturers, so long as you don't have foreign manufacturers competing. Worked out really well. Then the supply chain opened up. And then everybody quit buying surgical masks because nobody needed them anymore, because they didn't want to have to put these stupid things on and stand 6 feet apart from each other. And the only people who were buying surgical masks anymore were hospitals. And hospitals are all about profit, and they're going to get it from the cheapest place in the world, which is China. And so now the domestic manufacturers here in the United States who are producing masks are suffering the consequences from expanding their businesses during the COVID lockdowns. You see what happens here? You can't force it to take place. Now you have to put tariffs, and you have to subsidize, or you have to do all kinds of shit to keep the domestic manufacturing happening. It's not a viable company. That's not the way it works. And so, I mean, this is why I'm saying, it's like people are saying, well, we can, vote the right person into. You're not going to vote the right person in to protect you. You are on your own on this. Believe, if you're not doing something about it now, you're gonna fail. Like, the longer you wait to try and protect yourself away from the governments, away from the failing economies, away from all this stuff, the longer you wait, the harder it's gonna be on you. And the more you think that there's going to be a situation in which that you can bring manufacturing back, or that you can vote the right person in, or that there's going to be a time in which that things are going to be affordable again, it's not going to happen, right? It's going to be tough, and it's going to be hard, and if it's difficult, then that's probably the right way. Hey, thank you very much. Not an expert for the 4.99. I am very new to when it comes to investing. Can you explain what it specifically means when you say people will get out of the dollar? Thanks. Okay. Let's answer that one real quick. Okay, so this is a very interesting way to understand like what's happening around the world, because there is dollar denominated debt that people are just not quite aware of. Now, if you can imagine, there's nations and corporations around the world who have issued out dollar denominated debt. That's like a bond, like a corporate bond, or like a United States Treasury bond kind of thing, but only coming from a foreign country. And these corporations in these foreign countries who have sold these bonds, and essentially that's a loan when you sell a bond, because that's like, you're basically telling somebody, I'm going to, borrow money from you and pay you back interest over time. That's what selling a bond is you're borrowing money. They've done that in dollars, right? In United States dollars. So these are corporations, these are nations that have nothing to do with the United States. It doesn't have anything to do with our governments, our banking system doesn't have anything to do with us at all, right? But they have written debts that are due in dollars. So when these debts are due, they have to come from the United States dollar in order to extinguish those debts. And that's where like dollar denominated debt and getting out of it is what I'm talking about, is that they're not going to be issuing out bonds in dollars, right? These foreign nations, these corporations are not going to do that. And you also have to think, when these contracts are written, so like when a contract is written that is due in dollars, that contract itself ends up getting used as if it's dollars. It becomes a dollar in itself, so to speak, even though it wasn't produced by the United States. The fact that they have created an IOU that is due in dollars, it can now be used as a dollar, which is really strange to think about. So that adds to the supply of dollars that are being used in the world reserve currency status. So extinguish the contract, you not only are drawing strength by trying to acquire the dollars to strength or to extinguish the contract, but then also that contract no longer gets used as currency itself or as the dollar within the world trade. And so that ends up disappearing. That is strengthening the remaining dollars that are out there. Did I say all that right? Did I get that right, all-nighter? All right. Thanks for the question too, not an expert. That's a really good one. All right, JB, thank you very much for the $13.99 Canadian. That's very cool of you. We're sitting in cash waiting to put down payment on a house. Houses are $250,000 average, and we're looking to put 20% down. But, excuse me, even with perfect credit, interest rates are 6% variable. How much longer? I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, you have to think, how much higher are interest rates really going to go? I mean, now I couldn't tell you like how it works in Canada, but I imagine it's somewhat similar to the way it works here in the United States, in the fact that we have something called mortgage-backed securities here that really establishes where the mortgage rates are going to be. Now, this is something that I have thought about many times, and I don't know how many people are taking this into consideration, because they seem to think that the Federal Reserve and the lifting of interest rates is going to continue to raise the mortgage rates, which I don't know if it's necessarily going to be that way. Like, I have a feeling that the mortgage rates may not go up at the same pace as the Fed funds rates, which they really haven't. I mean, yeah, they did initially, when the Fed funds rates first took off, then the mortgage rates immediately kind of reacted to it. But then they kind of went off on their own and stopped going up at the same pace or in conjunction with the Fed funds rates, which is, again, everybody kind of assumes these two to work in lockstep together, but they didn't. The Fed funds kept going up, and the mortgage rates, which shot up really high, kind of plateaued off. And although they do kind of tick up a little bit, there was even reports of them going down there for a while. So what's happening is that the mortgage-backed security market is where these interest rates are getting established. And the mortgage-backed security market is, again, much like the student loan asset-backed securities. It's like a box that they threw a bunch of mortgages into, and then they sell that box off to investors. Well, the investors out there who are buying those mortgage-backed securities, they were really into that market during the whole pandemic because the quantitative easing that was happening had the Federal Reserve buying mortgage-backed securities. So when you have an entity like the Federal Reserve who's like, hey, we're going to buy billions of dollars worth of these things every single month, and like not even billions, like hundreds of billions, then what you end up with is you have a bunch of people, investors, who are like, hey, if the Federal Reserve is going to buy these things, well, I'm going to front run the Federal Reserve. I'm going to buy into the mortgage-backed security market. And as the Federal Reserve is buying these things, they're going to cause the price to go up just a little bit, and I'll be able to sell mine for a profit. So they didn't really care about getting the return on the mortgage-backed security, which is like the yield that it would have, much like a treasury or something like that. They were more thinking about the speculative asset that they would be able to sell to the Federal Reserve as the Federal Reserve was going into their quantitative easing. Well, we're in a much different situation now, right? Because as that was happening, people were like, man, look at all these low interest rates. As the mortgage-backed security prices went way up and the yields went way down, everybody started refinancing their loans, which caused even more mortgage-backed securities to be poured into the market. So as we had this huge pool of mortgage-backed securities that were in the market, the Federal Reserve, who was buying into these things, along with a bunch of investors who were trying to front run the Federal Reserve, that had a huge buyers and a supply within the market. Well, now what we have is that supply of mortgage-backed securities is shrinking dramatically, even though you have the Federal Reserve who is unwinding their balance sheet, which basically says that they are dumping those mortgage-backed securities back into the market, which you would think would cause the mortgage-backed security market to swell, right? The amount that's out there, since the Fed is dumping them out. But what's really happening is quite the opposite, because what that has done is caused the other investors to back away from it. Okay? So again, now this pool of mortgage-backed securities should start to grow, which, right, intuitively, all that still makes sense. That would then cause the prices to fall and the yields to begin to rise, which we are starting to see. Right? So as the yields begin to rise, the return on capital investment that the investors can get starts to increase, and they're now looking at those mortgage-backed securities without the Federal Reserve saying, wow, the fixed income on these mortgage-backed securities isn't too bad. I mean, it's doing pretty good. And there's fixed income investors out there who like these mortgage-backed securities because for the most part, mortgage-backed securities get paid because most people make their mortgage payments. Now, there was a problem during the great financial crisis, as there was a bunch of toxic assets out there, people who got loans that shouldn't, that didn't make their payments, those turned those mortgages into toxic assets. But today that doesn't seem to really be the case. So now as the pool of mortgage-backed securities is diminishing because you have less refinancing and less new home sales taking place, the interest that they pay, the yields that the mortgage-backed security pays, is increased enough for now the investor is looking at that for the return on capital investment and saying, hey, I think that's a pretty good position for me to be in. I'm going to go ahead and start participating in that market. And that is the reason why we saw the yields not keep pace with the Fed, is that now we have natural market, which whatever the hell that is, occurring within the mortgage-backed securities, supporting the prices of them. Does that make sense? So anyhow, I don't know where I was going with that. Wow, look at all these comments. My goodness. All right. Did I miss a super chat or did I get them all? I think I got them all. Let me go back up there. Okay. Avoid over leveraging and you will be fine. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is to not be like being out of debt and, as much income and low debt for the next couple of years is going to be the best way you can protect yourself, because there's going to come times when it's going to be very difficult to source out mainly food. I think that's going to be like the biggest issue. And you can already see it starting to take place as the farmland increases. Again, like, you have to think about it from the investor point of view. Don't think about it from like, what the people should do and it's horrible that these things happen. Okay, whatever. I mean, yeah, it's, we should all sit around the campfire singing Kumbaya and things should be awesome, but they're not, right? They're never going to be awesome. What you have to think is like, okay, food prices are going to go up. How is the investor going to react to this? If the investor believes that and what I mean by the investor, I just mean like If somebody had money, what they would do with it, right? Not like some greedy investor who's an individual or whatever, like you and me. Just somebody who has money who wants a return on their investment, right? Think about it like that. Just think about, like, it's not an individual, it's not a group, it's not a corporation, it's not a government. It's just the money and people who have it who are looking for a return on it. There's just like this entity out there, or this, not an entity, but like a belief. Okay, let's go off of it like that. And so now they think about this. You got food that's going to go up in price. How do you get the best return on that unless you invest in farmland, right? So you're an investor. You don't want to farm. Like, you don't want to produce a bunch of food yourself and try and sell it, right? You just want a return on your capital. So what do? You invest in farm equipment or something like that. Like, maybe, like somebody who manufactures farm equipment or something, right? Or you can get right into the farmland. Now, there's, real estate investment trusts who just deal with farmland. Now, if you're an investor who thinks, okay, food's going to go up, and what's the best way that I can make a profit off of this is to buy the farmland and get the, the profits from it that way, from the real estate portion of the increase in food prices. Well, as this starts to take place, the investment into this land starts driving the land up, the land value price up. Same thing with all the rest of the equipment that's out there and all the rest of the things that's going on with farming. This is what happened during the Great Depression. A lot of people want to argue with me on this one, and that's fine because everybody has their own theories. This is the way I see it, right? So as the investment into farmland and farm equipment started driving it up, the borrowing of money that went into that, right? So the return on the investment from the borrowed money has to come from the increase in food. All right, so the increase in food prices then starts to take place. As everybody is seeing this happen, all these farmers and everybody who is seeing this happen, they are increasing their production to take advantage of all these high food prices. The people who got in on the early days of doing this will do quite well, but everybody at the end who has taken out the most debt to try and buy the most expensive farmland right at the peak of production are going to fail, because all that peak production is then going to cause the prices of food to come down, and you're going to see a massive bankruptcy start to take place throughout a bunch of farmers and farmland. Now, how far out that takes is beyond me, but you're going to see the rise of food that's going to cause that scenario to take place. Isn't it fun listening to me? I mean, I'm just full of great stuff, huh? Hey, thank you, Mad Max, for the 20 Canadian. That's very cool of you. I got a lot of Canadians up in here today. Thanks for your time and answers to questions. We all need education in economics, especially in the coming crazy times. Happy New Year to all in the tribe. Stay free, stay informed. Absolutely. And that's really where like this whole thing really is just like, it's all about us as individuals. We have to figure this thing out for ourselves. It's like being economically aware is almost like being self-aware or something like that, where you realize that your conscious thoughts have energy that is being projected out to the rest of the world, and that's maybe one of the reasons why everybody is pissed off at you, or maybe one of the reasons why everybody likes you. It's the same thing. If you are understanding of that energy, then you can project that energy out there and get a lot of things coming back towards you. Well, being economically aware is very much the same thing. Like, you have to understand the position that you are in that in order to conduct yourself appropriately. I mean, it's the same for anything out there. And a lot of people, they don't know how to, like, can you imagine trying to be like socially aware, or like just trying to interact with people, but only thing you ever got for like an idea of how you're supposed to react with people is by watching sitcoms? Like, what kind of what kind of conversations and reactions and stuff like that you would have if this is how you learn to behave, is if you only watch sitcoms and everybody who was around you behaved like you were in a sitcom? I mean, you would be a complete idiot, And so this is really where, like, I think like a lot of people end up getting misunderstanding the economy, because they're getting it from like sitcom type of like information, especially if you're getting it from like the news. Like CNBC type of stuff. These guys bombard you with so much misinformation, and like irrelevant information, and then when they do give you the good stuff, it is so hidden inside of the lingo that they use that most people just miss it altogether, you know? I just bought a house. Well, good for you, Juice. All right. I use George Costanza as my role model. Good for you. I think he had a great outlook on life. All right. People are hoping and praying real estate won't crash because they are no toxic mortgages. But they can't pray the recession away. The recession will deflate all assets. Yeah. All right. Real estate is priced on the margin. All it takes is one price cut will make all the comps in the neighborhood come down in price. Um, I don't know. I think like I think a lot of the real estate prices is based off of the rents. I think Cantillon was very accurate in saying that there is no better way of seeing the abundance of money in the state than to see the rents and leases on houses going up. And man, if it's not a lot of truth to that. I mean, think about it. Like, just go and look at that Fred chart that I leave down there in the description for you guys, that Federal Reserve chart. It shows like the rent index for primary residence, and the only time that it has ever gone down was very, very, very slightly during 2009 to 2010. And for the most part, it was just sideways. And you look at that throughout all of history, there it is the only time, and it was for a very short, one little over a year long period that happened. So long as rents are paying the mortgage payment, I I don't see it. I just don't see it happening right now. And people standing on the sidelines waiting, they're renting. They're renting at a rate that they could be buying a house at. Well, they could have been buying a house at, not necessarily buying a house at today, but that seems to be the case. And so when you find that these prices come down even just a little bit, the buyers are going to jump for it, right? So how much can you possibly see these house prices come down? How many houses can you see come down at a significant amount is what I guess I should say. You're going to find individual deals coming all the time, and those pool of buyers are going to nab them up like sharks. Like, you're going to have to be so on the ball with your purchase of a home in order to get a good deal on it, because there's going to be guys out there who really understand this game who are going to get there long before you will. Like, by the time you see it, it'll already be nabbed up. All right? But right now, it's crickets. There's nobody buying house. Like, you could go and look at all the houses you want and have all the options and all the time in the world with anybody to look at a house and talk about a house. There's nobody out there right now. But the moment that house falls in price, you're going to be in so much competition. You better be on your game. You're going to have to be such a ruthless game player, that in order to get that house. Because think about all the competition. Think about everybody sitting on the sidelines, standing right next to you, wanting that one too. Yeah. All right, the infamous NYC. Thank you very much for the $5. New York City nurses going on strike for better pay, but mostly for better ratios. You can't print money, but you can't print nurses. People never learn. All right, but instead you waited for a 30% crash, and now you have to buy at 2020 prices with a 7% interest. Right. Hope the Cash Bros videos were worth it. Well, I don't know. Like, okay. 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 I like the idea of having a higher interest rate. Like, having a higher interest rate loan to me is way better, because then you get a return on your capital by paying the thing off early. So not only do you get a good deal on your house, right, because the asset price comes down with the high interest rate, but then if you make the payment, just the minimum payment on it, then yeah, it sucks, right? The high interest rate sucks for you. But there's no better return on your investment than to pay off debt. And if you have a high interest rate, then there's way no better return on your investment than to pay off that debt. So taking out a low asset price, or getting a better deal on an asset with a high interest rate, so long as you pay it off early, is a great way to go about it. I mean, definitely. put a sunblock back here. The sun has actually come out a little bit. All right. Dice is hot at 11. All right. A person needs $80,000 per year to get a house. Yeah, I'm surprised that somebody at $80,000 can get a house. I mean, in my area, you're not going to get one. I mean, unless it's like a really good deal. But the place. I mean, I could not believe how expensive homes have gotten in my area. I mean, talk about like growing up in an area that just about kicks you out. For the gentrification of it, like an average job person here. I mean, it sucks. It went from like, the possibility of having a, fixer-upper on a regular job and actually doing something here. That's gone away. You can't do it. It isn't happening. Millennial Mike, thank you very much for the $10. 115 years they've tracked rent value. Has never been 5-year period where rents dropped. Did a whole video on data on it. UE is correct. Slight drops in like '08 followed by the quick recovery. 115 years. This is what Millennial Mike did for research back on. I just did one off just looking at that Fred chart. And I mean, I already knew that the rents hadn't come down, but you take it all the way back, 115 years, all the way back to the Roman periods. It's not a time when rents come down. Rents won't come down. Rents are where the economy is when it comes to like the daily life of anybody. It's it's all about like your average job is going to pay exactly enough that it will make the rent, and that's it. Like that's exactly how much you're never going to have any more than that, and if you earn any more, the rents will go up. It's just the way it's going to be. And so I don't know, like, I don't know how people can like be so delusional as to think that there's going to be a time in which that rents are going to come down. I mean, they would have to be in such a way that they would come down. It would have to be like what was taking place during the great financial crisis. But think about all the toxic mortgage-backed securities and all the crap that went on during that time, and it still didn't bring them down. It made them flat. They just didn't go up. And I mean, the slight little dropping in rents during what should have been like the most incredible housing market debacle ever. I mean, it damn near took out the entire financial market, took out the entire economy, and it still barely brought rents down. I mean, think about that, guys. What is it going to take in order for rents to come down? It's going to take something like so beyond the great financial crisis, right? And in my opinion, the Federal Reserve has figured this shit out. Like they figured it out so that when the crisis scenario comes, they will have tools to put into play that nobody was anticipating. Very much like what they did with the special purpose vehicles. I mean, we go back and we follow what happened through the timeline. We know that those special purpose vehicles were lying in wait, ready for the financial crisis to start kicking in, ready for the recession. All they needed was a unusual and exigent circumstance to be created in order for them to deploy those special purpose vehicles. Once they did, they bailed out everything. And that's why I'm saying, like, what's the worst part of a recession? Everybody loses their job and corporations get bailed out. And people hate it. They hate it when those corporations get bailed out. And so if you have already bailed out the corporations, and you don't have any worries about having to do that, and all you have to do is just worry about taking care of the people during the next recession. Right? And that's where I feel like the central bank digital currencies will kick in, and people will be like, man, I'm starving, I'm hungry, and the banks will be like, the central bank will be like, yeah, no problem, you want to eat? Just start using this and you'll be fine, right? And everybody will be like, good, thank you for the new currency, I'm so hungry. All right. So even if real estate crashes 30% tomorrow, it won't, but if it does, you now have to buy 7 or 8% interest rates, and you are unwilling to buy the same asset, same price at a 2% interest rate. Same asset, same price. No, not the same price. Right? Right now, what I am saying is that rents are covering it. Right? That's what I'm saying. Like people's like personal decisions as far as an investment goes, that's one thing. Like you buy low, sell high. That's the smartest move to make. Well, these people who are speculating in the housing market, they were anticipating that there would be a constant rise in house prices. They thought that they could flip a house without ever doing anything to it. They didn't think they had to increase the value with, you know, putting some sort of like, effort into the home, just simply hold on to it for a few months and sell it. Right? That isn't going to happen. But the idea that rents are going to go down, why? There's never been a time in history that they have 115 years, right? According to Millennial Mike, through all the recessions and depressions and economic downturns and all the other stuff that happened, rents never went down, ever. So what is it that's going to happen here going into the future as institutional buyers are buying up these houses and renting them out? It's driving the wedge ever deeper into the separation between the rich and the poor. As we sit here and argue about whether or not there's going to be a housing market taking place, that wedge keeps getting driven farther and deeper, right? That's why I keep telling people, it's just like get on the right side of the wedge. If you don't want to buy a house, become a capitalist somehow. Lend into the system somehow so that you can get a return that puts you on the right side of the wedge. Most people who have figured it out, they're not like, they don't look at my videos and say, man, this guy's crazy. The only people who call me crazy are the people who are on the wrong side of the wedge. Right? Everybody else is like, hey man, you don't figure it out. You're like they might say, man, you don't really make sense, but at least you're doing it, right? I mean, it's just like people who are waiting to do it are gonna fail. You got to start. You got to start today. All right. Thoughts on Tesla stock? Yeah, don't buy it. Don't buy any stocks. That's my advice. Like, I mean, I'm not an investor I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not an investor. I don't do any of that stuff. But right now, I don't see any other position other than cash, right, than dollars to be in, at least for the next 6 months to a year. So long as the Federal Reserve continues on with the monetary tightening policies, I just don't see any reason to be anywhere else. It's just like, I mean, what is it that you're going to put your money into that's going to possibly go up during a monetary tightening policy other than rental incomes? That's the only thing I see that's going to be going up is rents. And even that, like, I'm going to wait for a great opportunity. And most likely, if I'm waiting around for a great opportunity, I probably won't see it because there's 10,000 other people standing right next to me waiting for that opportunity. So I don't know, bonds, gold, silver. Yeah. The ones who have been waiting for the market crash or the coming market crash next year are in the worst financial positions. I don't think they're in the worst financial positions. I think people who are waiting are in the best financial positions. I think where the problem is that what's going to end up happening is that they're waiting for something like an inevitable crash that doesn't come, right? Like, I was waiting to buy a house. Then, like, if I was still waiting to buy a house, I would not have had a better deal. Like, how long do the whole process of like being forced out of a rental house and into buying a house, the process I did not want to go through, has put me in a position in which that now I am buying a house almost cheaper than definitely cheaper than I could rent a house for, almost for the price that I could rent in a single bedroom apartment for. I mean, I didn't want to do it. Like, I was forced into it. Luckily, I was forced into doing it during a time when there was low interest rates. But I thought as soon as the interest rates go up, you're going to see the house prices come down. I thought of it just like everybody else did. I said it just like everybody else did, right? But that's not what took place. And it's not what's happening right now. So once you see that the event came and then it didn't occur the way you thought it was going to, it's time to change your beliefs. If you're so stuck on your beliefs that you can't change it, then you can't be an economist because things constantly change. You have to constantly take in the new information to understand it and process it and come up with those, cause and effects and the possibilities that will come. I thought for sure that once they ended the forbearance, that we would see a rise in foreclosures, that we would see a rise in new inventory. But what I wasn't thinking about is that once they put everybody into the forbearance and they stopped making their payments, that there was no rise in inventory because of the foreclosures not happening, that the amount of inventory out there for people to buy really depleted, causing the house prices to go up. So even if you didn't make your payments and it was time to come off of forbearance and you couldn't make the past payments, you just sold your house for a profit. So you walked out of there with all kinds of money. Like, there was no housing market crash. That was totally what I was thinking was going to take place. But they figured it out. They figured out how to cover all that shit up. And I got to stop cussing. I'm going to stop that. Sorry, guys. And so they figured out how to do all that. They figured out how to cover all of that up and leave the housing market with a depleted inventory and a ton of buyers. Tons of buyers. Just waiting. And now the Federal Reserve could say, like, hey, go ahead and turn them interest rates on up, man. Look at all them buyers and that little inventory we got out there. There's no way we're going to have a housing market crash. But make sure and tell them. Make sure and tell everybody that we're going to have a housing market crash so we can make sure that pool of buyers is definitely there. Because we want to make sure everybody's waiting down there in that pool of buyers, you know, because we can't have a lack of buyers out there if we're going to have, you know, a housing market crash. You know, we can't have that. We got to have the pool of buyers there. That way that prevents it from taking place. I mean, this is what I see happening. You know, I don't know what everybody else sees, but this is what I see, you know. All right. Will the Fed keep raising rates through 2023? They're going to raise, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, to be honest, I didn't think that they were going to raise them much above 2.5%. So we're way above 2.5%. But the economy right now is feeling the effects of 2.5% or maybe a little bit above that as we move into the lag period from the Fed funds lifting of interest rates to the point that it actually starts to impact the economy. We are just now starting to feel the effects of moving from a neutral economy into a restrictive economy. So right now we're going to start feeling what the real restrictive economy is like. Now, oh gosh, what was the question again? I already forgot. Oh, well, they continue to raise it throughout. So this is when the Federal Reserve is going to find at some point that the impact from the lifting of Fed funds rates has caused the consumer to slow down and cause the inflation to start coming down to the 2% target that they are looking for. Once that is achieved, that 2% target, they will maintain interest rates elevated for a significant amount of time after that so that they can get to their 2% average over time. So the lifting of interest rates doesn't really matter as much as the timing of the lag period from where the interest rates were 6 months to a year ago. That's what's really impacting the economy. The Fed funds rate and the lifting of it right now is more of an impact to the markets. Like, the markets impact immediately to that information. But the real economy, the decisions that we make, the purchases that we make, the businesses that we start, all that kind of stuff, that has a 6 month to a year lag behind it from the time that they lift the Fed funds rates. So once we see them lifting Fed funds rates up and then stop the lifting of Fed funds, keep watching 6 months to a year. Like, if it stays elevated like that for 6 months to a year, then you're going to start seeing how that's going to impact the inflation, average inflation rate over time. And I'm betting then you'll start hearing the Federal Reserve talking more about the average inflation rate and how that's the reasoning that they're using to keep the Fed funds rates elevated so that they can maintain that average inflation rate over time. So it's not a matter necessarily of if they keep raising the rates. It's more of the impact that the lag time has at the Fed funds rate at the time that it does the shifting or that stalling out. Gosh, I don't know if I'm saying all that right. I wouldn't pay so much attention to what the Fed does with their pivot on their Fed funds rate as much as where the 6 months to a year lag has the Fed funds rates at, because I think that's going to be more important to follow. Everything else is more about, you know, giving market the perceptions or, you know, the credible threats or whatever. All right. How do you know monetary tightening will not stop earlier than 10 months from now? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it's going to stop 10 months from now. I don't know that. I mean, I wouldn't know that if it's going to stop tomorrow. Monetary tightening is going to continue until the Federal Reserve has, found where the demand for their liabilities are. Think about that. Like, think about it from that fashion. Where, like, a lot of people don't realize that the Federal Reserve is doing two things, right? They have two things that they have to operate on. They have to deal with the domestic monetary supply in our economy here, and then they also have to deal with the fact that they have the world reserve currency going on. And so with these two things taking place, so long as the economy here in the United States is still continuing to function, and I pretty much mean by that is that they have low and stable prices and full employment. Well, the low and stable price part of it is out the window. The full employment has happened for quite some time. So their monetary policy has pretty much been met. If they are trying to bring the inflation back down to the 2%, what they are trying to do is keep the tightening continuing. Now, until they get that part done, right? That 2%, which I think is already being achieved. Like, they're getting there fast, and they're going to get there. The other part of things is the demand for liabilities coming from the rest of the world, right? So now this is where the dollar index is starting to take place, and that the basket of world currencies out there compared to the dollar has the dollar strengthening. And this is really where, like, the Federal Reserve, if they ever came into a position in which the demand for their liabilities grew so intense, it makes me wonder, could they even print at a pace that's fast enough to keep up with that demand? And now, how could that demand look? Is it the demand for people like literally wanting the dollar and holding on to it? Or is it the demand for the dollar as people are trying to get out of the dollar denominated debt? Either way, it's the demand for dollars, and the Federal Reserve has to supply the world with that liability, with the Federal Reserve liabilities, which is the dollars out there. So, I mean, what that world can look like and what it will be like, I mean, it's anybody's guess. Everybody has already written the dollar off a long time ago, and I'm thinking, nah, that's a mistake. It's not. That's not the way it's going to go down. Now, it may end up that way in the very end. Like, it could happen where the dollar is just completely out of the game and nobody's using it and it's gone. But the road to get there, I don't think is going to be a destructive dollar. Like, it's going to devalue all the way into the ground. I think the dollar would strengthen dramatically before that would happen. And so therefore, I don't think it's going to happen quite like that. The demand for the Federal Reserve liabilities are somewhere out there that nobody knows. Like, it's a number that nobody knows. Like, is it somewhere between here and here? Who knows? Like, nobody knows exactly what it is. But as the demand increases for it, the Federal Reserve has to figure out a way to inject that money into the system. All right? Yeah, I mean, there's just no other way. And if the demand falls for it, then there's got to be a way to pull that money back out. And that's really where the Federal Reserve has a very tricky business to try and deal with the domestic monetary supply and deal with the world reserve currencies. That's another reason why you'll never see another reserve currency step up and just replace the dollars, because there's no other nation out there that's willing to go into deep debt as the United States is. Like, I mean, you think about it, you have to provide the world with a safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasury, something that is guaranteed to pay, no chance of default. And then you also have to provide the world with the dollars out there. And so unless you have a nation that's willing to go into as much debt like the United States is, and then buy the world stuff, go into as much deficit, world trade deficit as much as the United States has, and buy more stuff than they sell, there's no other nation that's going to be able to provide the world with dollars. It's just, or a currency. It just can't happen. So, like, I mean, just name one. Like, the BRICS nations could try. They can come up with little systems, and they have, and they've taken some trade, but in order to be on the scale that the United States has, they aren't even coming close. Not even remotely close. Just got back. Did you already talk about central digital currency? Seems like the only valid crypto will be the government. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, is cryptocurrency even valid now? Like, is Bitcoin really is it valid? I mean, it's nothing, right? It's just a computer entry. The coolest thing about Bitcoin is that it gives you the ability to transact with somebody anywhere in the world, so long as they have internet access. And once you start that transaction, there's nobody that's going to stop it from taking place. Not a government, not a law enforcement, nothing. So, yeah, that's pretty cool, right? But, does it really have any value to it? No, it's just a computer entry, right? So, I mean, as far as cryptocurrencies go, and whether or not governments are going to allow them to be valid or have any value or something like that, I just don't see where governments have any say in it, like, at all. They have say in maybe like conducting business, like you can't operate your business, you can't pay taxes with it, you can't do all kinds of stuff. But you as an individual, they can piss off. There's nothing that they can tell you to do with it, right? You can do whatever you want, you can accept it for whatever you want. And if government says, wait, we don't like you doing it, then you know what? I'm going to do it just because you said not to, right? I mean, that's just because that's the way I am sometimes. I mean, especially if it comes to something like Bitcoin, where they're like, wait, we really don't want you using this stuff, and we're going to tell you you can't. And we'd be like, well, no, I ain't gonna listen to you, But when it comes to like central bank digital currencies, that's gonna be a whole other game. That's not the same thing that's gonna be taking place like with, a libertarian movement or something like that, where people are just gonna be like anti-government using it. I think like the central bank digital currencies is more of a way of getting cash out of the system and a way of like being able to take interest rates into a negative territory, since there is no real way of stimulating this economy. I think the Federal Reserve is doing their damn best to try and elevate the Fed funds rates as fast as possible to try and get it back up to that 5%. That was what they would normally use for ammo to try and stimulate the economy with. But I really think this is a false move. I don't really think that like lifting of the Fed funds rate is really the way that they're doing it to try and combat the inflation. I don't think this is all legitimate. I think they're lifting the Fed funds rate on the excuse of the inflation in order to get their ammo back. I think they screwed the inflation over by the severing of the supply chain. So while the supply chain is severed and the inflation is running rampant, the Federal Reserve is going to lift their Fed funds rates using that as the excuse to get their ammo back. Once the supply chain fixes itself, the inflation will come back down and the Federal Reserve will say, hey, we can stimulate the economy by dropping interest rates on the Fed funds level. But if they never had the severing of the supply chain, they never would have been able to get the inflation up to as high as they did, and they would never have gotten the Fed funds rates back up to 5%. So, yay, the Fed fixed it. Yay, whatever. But really, I think that's not going to work out very well for them, considering that it's not really... the dropping of the Fed funds rate, I don't think is really going to stimulate the economy like it once did. And I think they're going to have to go negative. And if you go negative with interest rates, then it'll eventually bleed into people's savings accounts. And if it gets into people's savings accounts, then they're not going to want to deposit their cash into the banking system. That's going to be a problem within itself. So they're going to have to pull cash out of the system to make sure that everybody stays within the banking system with their digital currencies. And then you'll be locked in forever, and you'll have the beast system, and they'll track, trace, tax, and control everybody with the draconian manners they do. Good times, right? How long have I been out here? Wow, 2 hours and 17 minutes. The interview between George Gammon and Michael Saylor is good. They cover real estate, inflation, gold, and BTC. Right on. I might have to go check that one out. Then it's 1984. Yep, I'm not taking advice from Saylor. I don't know. You already upside down on the real estate? No, not at all. In fact, I'm quite the opposite. It's very surprising. Like my house goes up like... I don't trust the ZELLE estimate at all. But even if you took it by half of what it's gone up over the last year, it's been like a stupid amount, like a ridiculous amount of money that it's gone up. I am so far from being underwater on this house. I don't even know how the hell that happened. So, I mean, I don't want to tell you the exact numbers because I just don't want to like people to figure out where it is that I live. But I had to put $42,000 down on my house, which or immediately, I mean, I had to put 10% down, right, on my house, which immediately gave me a whole bunch of equity in the house. And then it did nothing but go up the entire time. Even today, like the last Zillow estimate I looked at, the house has gone up, not down. So I'm not underwater. In fact, I have so much damn equity in this house, if I was to be able to even come remotely close to selling it to the Zillow estimate that is on there, that it's like, it tempts me to try and do it. Like, that's how serious I am about it. I am not even remotely close to being underwater. And like, I mean, people who are like try and take this attitude and that I'm trying to make things up or something like that. I am not. I mean, like, I have nothing to gain or lose by making stuff up like this. Okay. I truly really want to see house prices come down so I could get into real estate. That's like, want to be an investor. I don't invest. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to having that kind of opportunity if it was to present itself. I don't think it will, with everybody standing next to me doing the exact same thing. I'm not going to stand around and waiting with a bunch of people in the herd. Okay? I don't have herd mentality. If everybody is saying, hey, I'm doing the exact same thing, I'm like, well, I'm out of here. And that's exactly the kind of the attitude I'm taking right now towards it. I mean, I'm not backing out completely. What I am backing out on the idea that there's going to be a housing market crash because there's everybody standing next to me looking for a housing market crash. That's not my attitude anymore. My attitude is I'm going to look for a rental property that's going to meet the qualifications for a yield on return on my capital investment. That's what I'm going to look for. If it happens here in the next month, which I don't think it'll happen, but if it does, then I might take that opportunity. But that's what I'm going towards. I'm not looking for a housing market crash and then jump in. Like, you're going to be jumping in with everybody else. That's not going to work. Hey, you were at the top of my suggestion feed when I opened the YouTube app. Liked. Hey, thank you very much. All right. We got 307 likes and 385 of you out here. Thank you all very much for hitting that like button. I really do appreciate that. West Coast is never going to crash. I don't know, man. I mean, when I hate using, I don't use the word. I don't really like using the word never, right? Like, the word never is such a definite thing that it was just like, wow. And then it happens. And so people who put in the idea that never is just like, you've committed to an idea that may not be the case, Never say never. That's right. I pay cash for my 2 houses and will pay cash for my 3rd. See, this is where I'm getting at. Robert Shields Jr., thank you very much for the $1.99. I like George Gammon's theory on inflation nominal value. Yeah. George is a great guy, man. I mean, what a cool dude. When I first met him, I didn't know what to quite think of, I was like, holy crap. Like, here's this guy, he just kind of all of a sudden is like, gets a hold of me. I was just like, man, I really appreciate you giving me the shout out. And he, has his crew like, hey, man, let's, bring your channel a little bit more up to date. And, here's some advice for you. And like, I was like, holy crap, who is this guy? And the next thing I know, he's, talking with all the big name economists, and then he's putting on the Rebel Capitalist event and all kinds of stuff. It was crazy. The term crash is setting up false expectations. Save money, watch the markets. That's right. Like, be systematic and methodical about it. Like, like, I love the one rental at a time theory. Mike Zuber and Lumberjack Landlord, it's a buy box. They just punch the numbers into the system, and at the end of the equation is a yes or no. Like, that's it. You just keep punching those numbers in there. You don't have to wait for the news to say, hey, house prices are now affordable for you. It's like, you don't have to wait for that. It tells you right now, yes or no, yes or no. And it's more about like the rental, like whether or not you're buying rental income. Housing markets going down 30% could take easily like 4 years. You have plenty of time to adapt. Okay, Captain Happy, why? Why is the housing market going down 30%? I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong, and I'm not saying that it's not going to go down 30%, but I would like to know why. Like, I mean, we can just pull this number out of the air. Boom, 30% it's going to go down. Why? Like, I mean, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to say that it's going to like go up or down or anything else. What I'm going to say is like, I'm going to take my opportunities when I see them. But if you're going to wait for a 30% drop, how do you know that's going to happen? And what's the indicators that are going to prove that to be the case, or going to be proving that to be the case coming up? I actually think the stock market rips higher because everyone expecting a crash. Know your numbers. That's exactly right. Canada mortgages roll over every 3 years usually, unlike the US 30-year. Yeah, that's what I find weird about the mortgages. Like having to roll your mortgage over every 3 years. It's just like ugh, God. I mean, how do you plan for 3 years from now, you know? I think the next election will have a big impact on market direction. Stock market will be sideways for 15 years. Why? I mean, why is that going to take place? Anyway, you have plenty of time. I see long duration rates rising to a new high in 2023. What do you think? Like on the mortgage-backed securities, you think that there's going to be like a flood of like, I don't know, like there's going to be a lack of, I don't know, like a flood of mortgage-backed securities going in there, causing the price of them to go down. Like, I mean, there's not going to come from new home sales, and it's not going to come from refinancing. So, like, I'm trying to figure out what it is that's gonna do that. What's gonna cause the long durations to rise, like on the mortgages. Like, I mean, I could see it like happening on, I don't know. I guess if you're probably looking at like the U.S. Treasuries, if it's sat around long enough, then I guess probably the long-term impact of what people believe is going to be an inflationary scenario going into the future would cause the long durations to rise, like on the treasuries or something like that. But I have a feeling that here you're going to find in the next year or two that those long durations are going to come going to come back down again. And in fact, you were going to see a lot of support for it just even in the coming years, especially if you find like the rest of the world starts getting really into like troublesome territory, like world global recession kind of thing. Where are they going to go? Where are they going to run to? Like the only safe haven that they're really going to have is either gold, the dollar, or treasuries. And so most people are going to try and find some sort of return, and so they're going to get into treasuries. And if they get into treasuries, that's going to add support to the market, especially on the long end. And you're probably not going to see the interest rates rise. That's if you see, like, no matter what. I don't see a scenario in which the dollar is going to fail. First, it'll strengthen. No matter what. Like, no matter what will happen, it'll strengthen. And that's what's scary about it, is that people are going to get themselves into trouble as that happens. Like, if you see the dollar, when you see people talking about how awesome the dollar is, like, they're talking about how it's the safest place to be, how everybody loves the dollar, how strong it is, the strongest it's ever been, all that other stuff. Get out of the dollar. Do not listen to the mainstream media when they are talking about how awesome and how strong and how great it is. That's the moment that you want to be bailing out of that thing. And it's going to happen, because that's probably one of the scenarios, or one of the things that you should be looking for as far as people getting out of the dollar, or the fact that there is going to be some serious global recessionary crisis or something like that happening, because people are looking for the safe haven to get into. And if they're like exiting the dollar, then that would be even scarier, with the idea that they are going to get out of the dollar altogether. If it's a recessionary thing that they're scared of, and they're just looking to try and find a safe haven place to be, then the dollar is going to be fine. Like, they're just going to get into the dollar. They're going to buy treasuries. They're going to find their protection there. And then once they come out of it, then you'll find like them selling off, and they'll have like a little bit of issues from that. But if they're truly trying to get out of the dollar, and the dollar starts to strengthen because of that, get out of the dollar. Get out fast. Don't be in the dollar during that strengthening time. I mean, you might find your timing in it. You might be able to pick up some assets at a lot cheaper price as the dollar strengthens, but then you're going to find that it's going to be a horrible event after that, as hyperinflation scenarios and stuff like that really start to kick in. Mark, thank you very much for the $20. Hi, Simon. Just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work on the channel, and wish you and yours a happy new year. Well, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate that. What do you buy then? Well, that's just the thing. You have to figure it out for yourself on it. But right now, I'm not buying anything. I'm trying to figure out how it is that I can accumulate as much cash as I can, because I think that in the next 6 months to a year is going to be buying opportunities somewhere in there for something. After that, I don't know. Like, I mean, again, is 1 year that, I mean, in the reason why I call it a year from like right now is because the Federal Reserve in their Fed funds rate has caused the economy to be into neutral. We are now going into restrictive economy. This can only last for so long before the Fed reverses rates, or reverses on everything. This is the pain. This is the pain that start to come. This is when you're going to start seeing blood in the streets, the crying, the I lost everything, it's the Fed's fault, the government should have done something. When you start hearing these statements, that's when you want to be buying. That's when you want to have the cash position going on. If you buy something now, you're going to miss out on that position, especially if you lock it in for any kind of length of time. So what do you buy? Buy more dollars. Buy out of debt. Get out of debt. That's what you should buy. And be out of debt. And then just, like I said, I mean, a 5% return on $1,000 will be $50. Is it worth it to make the $50 to say, hey, at least I didn't lose, that much to inflation, to use that excuse? Or would it be better to have $1,000 and be prepared for a buying opportunity by having $1,000 in your hand? Not saying $1,000 is a lot of money or whatever to, buy into real estate or something like that with. But what I'm saying is, like, even if it was just $1,000, do you really want to tie it up for a $50 return? All right. I'm holding more cash than I ever have, and I usually hold 10 to 20% of net worth. Wow. Yeah. I like long duration investor grade credit. We're going to get rich, baby. I don't know. Go for it. Let me know how you get there. Get out of unproductive debt and into productive debt. That's exactly right. A fool and his money is soon parted. You use debt and leverage from the bottom of the market and deleverage until top of the market happens. You got to start somewhere. Happy New Year. That's so true. I mean, you really do. Even if it's, it's kind of funny, like, even something like with cryptocurrencies, like I like, even when I talked to Schiff, he was just like, he shook his head when I told him that I was a buyer of Bitcoin. And he says, well, as long as you don't put any money in there, you plan on not losing, plan just going away if you don't mind gambling or whatever. Well, that's kind of the way I look at it. It was just like, yeah, I never really put any money towards crypto that I was expecting to get back. Like, I just wanted to have some cryptocurrencies. I was tired of not having it. I was tired of seeing like Bitcoin run up and then not being part of the game, to saying, oh, I wish I could have been there or whatever. I don't anticipate making a bunch of money off of cryptocurrencies. I just don't think that's going to happen. I shouldn't say I don't think it's going to happen. What I should say is that I'm not anticipating that happening. Like, I don't care if that happens. That's not the reason why I got into cryptocurrencies. I got into it so that I could have some skin in the game, so I could be part of it, so I could say, yeah, I have some. I do buy $50 a week at times. I haven't lately, just because I've been trying to save up for other things. But, there was times when I bought $50 a week just to be in it, and it did quite well. Like, I could have like cashed out for a significant amount of money. Will that happen again? Yeah, probably someday, whatever. Is this something that, I'm like counting on? No, not at all, because I don't put that much money towards it, and I don't think anybody else should either. There's a lot of people out there who are throwing all their money, like taking out mortgages and stuff like that, taking out second mortgages to put down on Bitcoin or something. I mean, there's some crazy moves. I would never do that. But, if you really want to know how it is to be in the game, you got to be in the game. Yes, crypto is about invention called blockchain. Yeah, hard to see it fail. It is. I mean, it's not going to fail. Like, even if it was to, like, people didn't care about like exchanging it for dollars, the protocol still works. Like, you can still make transactions of Bitcoin, no matter what. Like the old Chinese saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. This applies to buying real estate in the U.S. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't people who lose their ass in real estate. I mean, it happens. There's horror stories about it all the time. I took 10 years out of my life buying real estate. Like, I bought a house and it immediately went into the great financial crisis and tried to hold on to it for a long time. I mean, until I got lost everything. I sold off everything. I didn't have any more money. And then it took me 10 years to recover from it. So from somebody who actually got heavily damaged by real estate, I mean, yeah, I mean, take that. Again, is are we going to see a housing market crash? I mean, maybe, I don't know. Harry Dent thinks Bitcoin will be the best asset after things crash, you can buy it cheap. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in order for Bitcoin to be like that kind of asset, to be like the best one, then like it would have to be adopted by the governments, right? Or it would have to be adopted by the banking system at least. And I don't see that happening. Like, I don't see the banking system taking on Bitcoin as like the backing of currency or something like that. I mean, if there was a secondary layer, like maybe like the Lightning network or something like that, that could cause the Bitcoin transactions to be faster, scalable, so that you could actually have it as a daily currency, buying a cup of coffee with it or something like that. But it seems so remote right now of a possibility that I just don't see it. Like, I see Bitcoin being used more for like major transactions, like transactions between governments, between corporations, you know. Maybe an individual if they were like buying something big like a house, you know. But other than that, like, I don't know how it is that Bitcoin itself and the protocol could be used on a daily basis amongst the people. All right, won't somebody, not me, do something? Okay, think about the young people taking over down the line. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think the young are very enthusiastic people when it comes to being independent. You know, um, I don't know. Like, the things that made like America strong, like the family formation thoughts and stuff like that. I just don't see how it is that America can possibly go back to a strong mental family formation, people like that. Like, that's like that kind of thing doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, it does among some people, but for the most part, people are like just these people just loaded up some lumber from the river. They must have found some boards. Um, but for the most part, I just don't see where people are like wanting to do that, like to buy a house, have the family, raise the kids, do that stuff. I mean, there's a bunch of people who do that, but not enough. Like, most people just want to, I don't know, just run around, do whatever the hell they want. I guess no one believed them when they said you'll own nothing and be happy. You know, that just drives me nuts. Like, you own nothing and be happy. For most of my life, I didn't own anything. So what is that a threat? Is that a threat to me? I mean, is there some entity out there threatening me right now, saying that I'm not going to own anything? Because if they're threatening me, I'm missing it. I missed that threat. Maybe they need to come and say it right to my face or something like that, because I'm not intimidated by something like that. You're going to own nothing? Yeah, go ahead and promise me something that I already have. Right? I own nothing and be happy. Why don't you just tell me I'm going to be happy, and then it'll still be the same thing, right? I mean, I don't have anything. I have 347 more payments. That's what I have. That's the only thing. I have that in a $500 car. So somebody says, like, you'll own nothing and be happy. Go ahead and promise me the good time. I already have nothing. Like, that just drives me nuts. I'm not taking that threat. I ain't taking that threat, you know. Go ahead and say it to my face and see how well it works, because I'm not, eat the bugs. You're going to eat bugs. I'm not eating bugs. And you dip them in chocolate, I might eat that bug. But I ain't eating bugs, all right? I ain't eating bugs, and I already don't own anything. So we're already there. I don't know what they're threatening me with. I mean, that threat already exists. I already am there, Just fucking own nothing and be happy. I don't know where the hell people get off on that stuff. 50 return on 1,000 is a no-go. Hello from California. Go listen to them tell you to your face, then it will make sense of their threat. They mean it. Well, then go be threatened, all right? Go be threatened by them. I'm not threatened by them. I'm not going to conduct my life under a threat of somebody else. That isn't going to work. It isn't going to happen like that, all right? You accept their threats. You go and live in life and conduct yourself with a threat, with the power of their power over you because they threaten you. I ain't dealing with it. Nope, not me. They're talking specifically about making private property illegal and destroying it as a civilization-wide concept. Am I not encouraging people to get out there and be the capitalist? Right? Food, conveniences, pleasures of life. There's 3 things. That's wealth. Food, conveniences, pleasures of life. After that, there's 3 people who live independently of the state. Right? The prince, the property owners, and the capitalist. If you're not going to be a property owner, be a capitalist. If you're not going to be either one of those, then go eat bugs. Am I going to pop any fireworks today? I don't know. I was thinking about shooting the guns, though. I might pull the guns out, shoot the shotguns or something. Do you like crickets? Gee, triggered. Yeah, I am kind of triggered when people say that you're going to be threatened by other people. Don't be threatened by people. Come and bring that threat to me. I want to see it I want to see the threat face valued, right? I mean, I'm not going to, somebody was just like, you're going to own nothing. And it was just like, oh yeah, well, watch me then. Watch me own nothing. See how that works out, Because, go be a capitalist then and don't own anything. Deeds are not ownership. Title stands against all other claims. Yeah, that's right. Love it, UE. Screw their threats. That's it, man. I mean, you're gonna live under the power of somebody else's threat. Like I'm not gonna make these. I'm not gonna do something because they're gonna come down and they're gonna say that I'm gonna eat bugs and they're gonna make my property. They're gonna take my property from me or something like that. So I'm not gonna go forth with my life and be prosperous because they have this threat against me. What the hell? What kind of pansy? Ugh. I'm not saying the threat isn't real. I'm just saying don't conduct your life as if they're going to actually do something to you, I mean, go about your life the way you would want to live it. Don't live your life the way they want you to live it. Freedom in the Constitution until I die, brother. That's right. That is exactly right. They passed all these stupid laws here in Oregon about guns, and people were like, dude, they're coming for you. You got your guns. They're going to... And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stand on the other side of my door with the Constitution in one hand and my firearm in the other. And unless they have a warrant, good luck. All right? Good luck. If you got a warrant, then I guess you're going to come in, right? Just like the song says, But if you ain't got no warrant, I ain't opening the damn door. And there ain't nothing that's going on the other side of it that's illegal because you can't convert a constitutional right into a crime. I mean, I'm not, it's just like, understand. It is, God bless you. Happy New Year. Yeah, I'm a little lit up. Sorry, guys. Are you threatened by Klaus Schwab? No. I don't even know who that dude is. I do not give that dude the time of day for any of my energy. None. Like that guy, he was just like, we're going to come down on you with this whole world threatening thing or whatever, then bring it, man. I mean, I think what you're probably going to be more scared about is the fact that there's going to be a bunch of guys like me who are going to take care of business when it comes down, right? I mean, we don't go out there and talking and raising a bunch of shit at capitals and stuff like that. We are the real thing, right? Patriots don't protest. Remember that, right? Patriots are paid to riot. There's a difference in that. A warrant not signed has no jurisdiction without consent. That's it. They don't. Patriots don't protest. Patriots just live their life the way it needs to be done. Period. End of story. They don't go and like tell somebody, hey man, my life isn't right because of you and I'm going to protest the whole thing. No. You just go and you just start conducting your life the way it's supposed to be done. Period. End of story. I love seeing it out on the streets. Don't get me wrong. When I see people out there on the streets and they're throwing their signs and they're all pissed off, I love that. That's the freedom of speech. That's the right to protest, right? That's the right to air your grievances out there. But if you're a real patriot, you wouldn't be out there in the first place. Right? Or what they would call a real patriot, I should say. I'm glad you had the dice up for love it. That's why nothing changes. I never wore the mask, pure blood. The only time I wore the mask is when I was standing inside a private property. That was it. If I was out in public, I did not wear the mask. But if I was standing in private property, that's not my place. That is not my rules. That is not my position to tell other people how it is that they should be conducting themselves on their private property. If they want people to wear a mask on their private property, then that's their right. That's what the whole point of having private property was. Like even the stores, when people were saying like, I'm not going into the store, it's my right not to have to wear a mask. No, it's not. It's your right to not have to wear a mask out there on the street. But when you're in a store, you have to conduct yourself in a way, if you truly believe in rights, then you have to conduct yourself in a way that is appropriate to the people's private property or the private property decision. And if they had made a decision that they want people to wear masks while you're standing on their private property, then you should respect that or don't go on their property. Pretty simple, right? Now, I had to go to work. I wanted to work. I didn't want to wear the mask, but I wanted to work. So I wore the mask when I was standing on private property, earning money, right? I mean, I was willing to give that up because there's no place there that I have any rights, right? Not like that anyway. I mean, you have supposed rights, workers' rights, stuff like that. But you don't have, your rights are out there on the street. They don't stand out there. You don't stand in somebody's private property and then claim you have rights. That's not the way it works. And if you do that, then you don't understand rights. Just in shop at their businesses. That's exactly right. That's it. That's what you do. You tell them, I'm not putting my money in your pocket because I don't believe in your cause. And if you make people wear masks, then I don't believe in your cause. That's totally legitimate, great American way to think about it. Before I was told by my boss I was essential, I thought that was a name of a store brand canned goods. That's right. And then there's common courtesy. Right. Well, common courtesy and rights are not the same thing, right? You don't, those are not the same thing, right? I mean, but you're right. There is common courtesy. Hey, you can just be polite and just say, hey, I'm going to wear my mask when I'm around somebody else because they would want me to wear it, right? That's fine. But I don't conduct there was a time when I have, but I am not the people pleaser anymore. I'm going to try not to be. And I don't really give a shit if you want me to wear a mask or not. It's not up to you, right? That's not your decision to make, right? And if you don't feel comfortable being in public with people who don't have masks on, don't go into public. Hey, don't go out, right? But you want everybody else to conform for you. That's not going to work. That's not the way this works, right? What you do is you conduct yourself in the best way that you can in public without disturbing anybody else, right? That's the way I think it should go down. And I think most people would probably believe that too, Hey, right on. 340 of you and 345 likes. You all must love the constitutional stuff. I'm a pretty good constitutionalist, huh? I mean, I'm serious about that stuff. I'm an anarchist when it comes down to it. I do not believe in government control over anything. I think we, the people, can take care of business ourselves. And especially with blockchain technology coming up and smart contracts, we could really just make government and jurisdictions and laws just completely irrelevant. We don't even need them. If you don't like to be told what to do, never enlist in the U.S. military. Why? Well, yeah, sure, you don't want to be told what to do, but when you give up 4 years of your life, what do you get in return for that, right? I mean, there's a lot that you can get in return. You may not like being told what to do, but at certain times you can relinquish some of your freedoms for some security. And when you're doing something like for the US military, you can get a lot of security from something like that by giving up your freedoms. Now, granted, nobody likes being told what to do, but then everybody loves security. So, right, there's a trade-off that happens inside of that stuff. I didn't enlist. I was commissioned as an officer in the military, and they gave me an MD and board certification, sent me to Hawaii, where I bought 3 rental properties. I love hearing stories like that. It wasn't If it wasn't for the military, I would not be financially free in my 30s. Hey, good for you. Well, the thing is that I grew up in the military. My dad was in the Coast Guard, and he retired when I was about 13, 14 years old. And I can tell you, being in the military, being like a military brat, it was decent. Like, we always had decent housing. I got nice teeth from it, like a lot of my friends they don't have nice teeth, especially up here in the Pacific Northwest, where it seems like everybody's a meth head. But, like, having a military life was really well structured. It was nice. Like, I mean, I really appreciate my dad going through all that. He was very much in that kind of mindset. Like, he did military for 20 years, then he worked for the state parks, doing, working for Fort Stevens. He did that for another 20 years. So, like, he got a state retirement, a government retirement, Social Security. He did it all, did it all that way. I did not. Like, everything I did was from private. Like, I, worked for private companies. I worked for, small businesses, stuff like that. Pretty much freelancing a lot of it. And there was times when my dad looked at me, he's like, man, kid, you make a lot of money doing that, like doing the construction and something like that. But I look back at him and I'm thinking, man, Dad, you got all the retirement thing. You got your, like, retirement covered, for the most part. And, like, for me, I gotta figure out something. Like, I don't know, I got that many years left. I mean, I guess I could go to the Park Service for 20 years and try and put something in like that. But the chances of me doing like what he did that's not going to happen. So yeah, I could see where military is definitely good, especially for somebody who's really, somebody who's really wanted to be structured. Like, they don't want to take chances or anything else. They want to work hard, put some money away, and retire with a decent life. Well, you can do that in the military. You can do that with just about any job if you really are disciplined. Just, make sure that you put that money away, get the compounding interest working for you, start really young, and you can pretty much be stupid your whole life as long as you do that. And at the end of the game, at the end of the day, you'll be all right at the end of your retirement. But most people don't. They end up screwing it off like I did, Wow, look at all these comments. You guys are just killing it tonight. We grew up in Michigan, and his parents got divorced, and dad moved to, you guys are all talking, I guess. No nice teeth. Are your friends Brits? No. I shouldn't say nobody has nice teeth around here. It's just, you see it. All right. I'm wanting to start a family and get into a house of my own and stop renting. I'm experiencing fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and trying to time the market. My lease is up in August. What it'll look like. That's what this whole channel is all about. I mean, we're all trying to figure it all out, and nobody can predict the future on it. I'm just looking at this market, and I'm looking at the pool of buyers out there, and everybody's saying that they're waiting for this housing market to drop so that they can take advantage of it. And I'm just thinking, man, that's not going to give you a whole lot of opportunities. When a house comes down, like divorce, death, or destitution takes place, it's going to get snapped up so fast. Like, there's so many people that just itching to buy right now. And I don't know, like, how are you going to significantly raise the inventory at the same time bring the prices down to make that happen? I don't know. Like, all I can see is a wave of foreclosures coming that would cause the inventory to rise, and that would have to geez, I'm starting to lose it. And that would have to be caused by a rise of unemployment, you know. All right, Millennial Mike for the $5. Thank you so much. The day I'm ordered to take people's guns and betray the Constitution is the day I hang up as a cop. American liberties above all else. Well, and that's just it, you know, and that's where the respect for the Constitution really starts to come in, is because if you have respect for the Constitution, then none of this stuff would take place. Just straight up, like it just wouldn't be there, you know. I mean, Millennial Mike is a police officer, right? He swore an oath to uphold and protect the Constitution. Okay, before anything else out there, right? I mean, maybe you didn't. I don't know. I'm assuming that you did, right, Mike? I mean, I'm assuming that you did. But, you know, I know all military has, and I don't know if they make all the police officers do it any longer, right? But there was a time when everybody was sworn an oath to do that. So if you come to a point where you know your constitutional rights are being violated, it's up to you to protect them. And that officer will protect you, right? I mean, they're supposed to. And if you get them to honor their oath, they will, right? And now, for the most part, police officers just want everybody to behave, right? They just want everybody to behave. But people don't behave. And lots of times, people give police officers a hell of a time when they really shouldn't. They got a hell of a tough job to do, right? And when they're in such dangerous positions as they are, trying to protect your own self, at the same time trying to protect the citizens of this country, at the same time trying to keep the respect of the people, that's a tough position to be in. I don't envy that. You know, there was a time when I wanted to be a police officer myself. Like, I really thought that that was something that I wanted to have in my life. But then when I realized that being a police officer meant that you were going to have to deal with the pits of society every single day, I don't know if that was something I really wanted to do. Like, helping people sounds great, but having that as a daily job every single day, I don't know if I would find that rewarding. A lot of people do. You know, I'm proud of people like Mike for sticking it out and, you know, doing that tough job. You know, just losing the respect of people for no particular reason at all. You know, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, those people aren't, you know, worthy of they're not worthy of anything, you know, if they have no respect for a cop just simply because they're a cop. You know, I don't know. Let's move on. As an Englishman, I have to be fairly skeptical about the United States Constitution. Why? Why? What's skeptical about the United States Constitution? It is one of the shortest written things in the entire world as far as like the way that a government should conduct themselves. You know, a lot of people say, and I don't know, like, I don't know how to say this without just sounding just terribly horrible, but, you know, a lot of people like give it a hard time because they say it was only written, you know, the Constitution was written for wealthy, white, rich landowners or something like that. Well, maybe if you follow the structure of the Constitution and the rights and everything that went with it and what these guys were thinking, maybe you'd be rich property owner yourself, right? I mean, this is like, I don't know. I mean, people were like, man, they had it all so perfect. That sucks. I'm going to take away that system so they don't have it, and neither do I. Yeah, I mean, it was just like they set up a system so that you could have it too. And why would you deny yourself that? Like, I'm going to put into place the things that secure me in my lack of availability or possibilities, I guess I should say. I mean, you know, we're going to put laws into place that say, here, comfort and security and medical and housing and food. But you don't know, none of that freedom stuff. You know, you don't get the decisions for yourself, and you don't get to travel, and you don't get to do all the other things because, you know, we have to protect you, you know. We're here to help. You know, I don't need any of that. And the Constitution was written in such a way that it left this country just this side of anarchy, which is just about as close as I'm cool with, right? I mean, just this side of anarchy I'm all right with, but I'd rather just be anarchist. Thank you very much for the $5, Nazik. Are you attending Lumberjack's real estate course? You mentioned you wanted to invest in real estate and rental properties. Yeah, I've been actually talking with Matthew about that exact course, and I am very much on board with taking that course. Now, have I done it yet? I haven't, but I would encourage everybody to go and take that course. I mean, you think about it. You want to surround yourself with the people who are doing what it is that you want to do. Right. I hate to say I had to cut off a lot of my friends. I don't hang out with a lot of people that I used to hang out with, mainly because I quit drinking. But a lot of it is because they're not because they're not good guys. I mean, everybody around is great people, but I'm trying to elevate myself up to a much higher level. And in order to do that, you have to surround yourself with the people who are of that level, right? That's why I try to hang out and talk with Lumberjack Landlord and Mike Zuber and George Gammon and Peter Schiff and all these other people, is because that's the direction I want to go to. If I hung out with all my drinking buddies and let them brag up about how awesome my YouTube channel is, where the hell am I going to go? Like, what am I, what would that do for me other than, make me feel good for the moment, All right. The Constitution guys were the best of the best. Well, you have to think, like, what other place in the world is it that people were coming to in droves to try and make it, right? Think about it. They come into this country, not so much anymore, but there was a time when they came to this country. You had an idea, you had a business, you had anything in your mind. Where did you want to go? Did you want to go to, I mean, were you headed off to France to share your ideas and to make your big money, or were you headed to the United States? You're going to America. America's where you made it. It's where everybody made it, or tried to. All right. 18 amendments is enough. Yeah, it should have been just the first 10. And really, and I hate to say it, but actually, you're right. The Constitution is screwed up because they didn't do it right. They amended the rights. The rights ended up being like a Band-Aid onto the Constitution, right? But it's stuff that should not, it shouldn't have been a Band-Aid to the Constitution. It was like a fix. And it really shouldn't have been done that way, because now people think that these amendments, these first 10 amendments to the Constitution, are somehow like negotiable or something like that. They're not. They're not negotiable rights, right? This is something that is like, it's not even like up to the government. Like, unless the government is completely gone, so long as you call it the United States, then it's up to you to protect your rights on it. And those first 10 amendments are absolutely critical for you to conduct yourself. The rest of it is the way the government conducts themselves. But the first 10 amendments are for you, to protect yourself from them. All right? And that's where I think a lot of people are missing it. They, like, if they don't understand what those things are, if they don't know how to protect themselves when it's being restricted or being taken away or changed or whatever, then how do you know if you lose them? Like, if you don't know it, then how do you know you're going to be voting for a person who's going to be protecting it? You won't. You just simply won't. All right. There's just something too majestic about staring. There's something so majestic about staring at a 1-ounce silver buffalo. Yeah, there is. Keep up the good work, UE. Keep helping the people in 2023. Yeah, I will. Like, I mean, you'll have to make the decisions for yourself. Like, I mean, I give you my ideas. I give you my, thoughts on what I think is coming. I try to share as many articles and insights on how I think the banking system is working, how the Federal Reserve is conducting their business. But ultimately, when it comes down to what decisions that we have to make as far as individuals to prosper, that's everybody's on their own. Yeah, I mean, you are absolutely on your own when it comes to that. Buying a duplex right now with these interest rates the way they are, at the prices they are, might be the absolute best decision you have ever made. Believe me, You won't know it until it happens, right? Here it is a year later. I didn't realize buying that house a year ago, which I thought was one of the worst decisions I had ever made, turned out to be one of the best ones so far. So again, like, I study the economy every single day. How do I know? How do I know what is the right decision to make? I certainly wouldn't know for you. I mean, how I could barely figure it out for myself, right? There is no profit without risk. That's exactly right. And if you think about it, I'm waiting until I can buy a house and there's no risk. Does that sound right? Does that sound like it's going to be right? I mean, no profit without risk. So I'm going to wait till there's no risk. And there probably won't be any profit either. All right, you have a choice. Weep for King George's death or passing of George Washington. You and me both. All right. It is illegal to put cameras everywhere in schools in public. I don't know. Why is it illegal to put cameras? I mean, the thing is like, I have a camera in my hand. If I have that camera on 24/7, that is my right, no matter where I'm at. Now, there are times that I'm not legally allowed to be somewhere because the property owner says, get off my property. And at that point, I legally have to leave or else I'll get trespassed, right? But anywhere that I'm standing, I have my rights. And that is including the freedom of speech, which is that camera. So, no, there is no place in public that I have that it will be, my constitutional right will be converted to a crime. So again, if I'm on public property, I'm good. If I'm on private property, we have something else going on. All right. Oh, Durango, what's happening, man? Well, sure, there's no profit without risk. However, what they've been doing in real estate market is simply turning everything into a rental property. Thus, they are going long on the investment. Yeah. Will Trump run as an independent? Couldn't tell you. Don't really care. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude about that one, but I really don't care. I just don't find that to be important. A lot of people will blame one administration after the other for the situation that's going on in the economy. That's a very misguided way of looking at the economy. In fact, you will probably be more confused about the economy looking at it through the eyes of politics than you would ever be just leaving politics completely out of it. If you exclude them from your thoughts and the process of what's going on with the banking system and investments and stuff like that, you will find that you will be much more of the understanding of what is happening in the economy. But the moment that you start including politics into it, everything gets clouded and screwed up. All right, Mr. Cheerful, thank you for the super chat. The last bear market in the U.S. housing was 6 years from high to low. Will this one be the same? I don't know. It depends on what you're talking about, a downturn in the housing market. I mean, if the downturn in the housing market is like what we're experiencing right now, where you have less home sales, less home production, less home reinvestment, or rolling over of old debts into new debts, like refinancing. I mean, these are all downturns in the housing market. Every bit of that is, and so how long will this last? Probably quite a while. But if we're talking about prices as being the indicator of the crash, who knows what's going to happen there, right? Rents seem to keep that elevated, and I don't see where that's changing. Now, unemployment will change that. Like, my beliefs will completely change if unemployment would rise significantly, and that's what I'm looking for, and I don't think that's not going to happen. Like, I think unemployment rising will happen. I'm just waiting for that to happen in order to make that call to say, okay, now we can start looking for the housing market crash as far as prices coming down. It's okay to refinance to fix your house or not. Well, I mean, if you don't have any other choice, I mean, I think it would be better to fix your house and to keep it from deteriorating farther, because it may end up costing you more in the end, to wait. So yeah, I think it would be foolish to not fix your house, especially if it's going to deteriorate more. I mean, I know this exact one because I got a roof that I need to deal with, and I was going to do it last summer, but the prices of everything was still too high, so I'm waiting for my material to come down, which is coming down. So, all right, where are we at here? Man, I have been going over 3 hours. My goodness, guys, how much power do I have left here? Oh, I got 14% on my phone. Let's just give it like another 15 minutes or so, and then I'm gonna bail out of here. You getting a metal roof? No, I'm gonna do comp on some of it, but then I have like a covered patio that I might do the out of metal. I had considered doing the whole thing out of metal roofing, but as of right now, I think I'm gonna do comp for most of it, and then metal over the patio. Just like Owen, 3-hour streams. My gosh, Owen goes 3 hours too, huh? First time I have seen you in daylight. Yeah, well, we got here in the afternoon this time. What industries do you think will flourish for salesmen in the coming years? Also, what do you think of future of the hospitality industry? Thanks, you. You're the man. I watch everything you post. Well, I appreciate that, AS. What industries do I think would be good for sales? That's going to be difficult to say like this one particular industry over another. What I would say is find a sales position in which that you can get commission, right? Because that's going to be pretty critical for making a lot of money, is that you have to make commission, not just make sales and get an hourly wage. Then you have to work more hours. Hold on one second, guys. Let me turn this up. This guy's got his radio blast. So when you go out there to find a sales position, I would look for one that definitely pays commissions, and then find one that doesn't have like a limit to how much you can do. Like, for example, like you might be able to make commissions off of doing mattress sales, right? Like, selling beds or something like that. But it's going to be kind of hard to go out there and find mattress customers. Like you might be able to do something like maybe hit hotels or do something like that to be kind of like the savvy salesman to get in there and find mattress sales. But for the most part, you're going to end up being just limited to the amount of customers that come through the door, right? And then be the best salesman you can as they come through the door. So that's where the other angle is. And believe in your product. Like that's going to be the other thing. So those are like the three. If you're looking for a position, one, definitely believe in your product, because that's going to make selling the product so much easier. The other one is commissions, and then limit on customers. Make sure you don't have a limit on customers, like limited to how many come through the door. You got to be able to go out there and hit the streets and find those customers if you need to. Yeah, that's the type of thing. So however you figure that out, that's the way. And you can do it with all kinds of stuff. You don't need to do conventional things. Like, I mean, you could find like some other company out there that does sales that you just go and just be figure out the affiliate sales. Like, just follow this link, I mean, I don't know how. You got to be creative, All right. I think selling products on Amazon is the safest way to be an entrepreneur. Absolutely, man. I mean, that's definitely, one of the gig economies that's happening out there right now is just people just doing fulfilled by Amazon. Where you find a product that you can sell on Amazon, you buy a pallet from China for super cheap. Amazon takes care of the entire business, packaging, shipping, everything. You just, basically just make sure that the products are in stock or whatever. I mean, these type of things are all over out there. Why it is that people don't do more stuff like this is beyond me. It just runs itself for you. Yeah. One was under warranty, the other one I fixed. Okay. Hey, your window goes up faster than mine. Yeah, I think it's just not cold right now. Okay, guys, this has been so much fun, but I have been out here like 3 hours, 12 minutes, 272 of you listening right now, which is just incredible how long you've hung out with me. I think I saw close to 400 up there at one point. There's 373 likes and $140 worth of super chats. You guys are always just so supportive of the channel. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. you've changed my life in so many ways. And, you know, this channel, I don't know what I would do without you. I've said it a million times, but I really am serious when I say that I don't know what I would do without you guys, because it has absolutely made everything for me. And I'm going to keep coming out here and doing this for you every day if I can. Every day I'll post videos. I'm going to keep trying to get the interviews. I got a few more lined up, some really exciting, you know, big hitters kind of in the hopper. I'm going to try and get some of those people that I know from the streets, you know, from the boots on the ground kind of thing. You know, these are great interviews with some really good information. We're doing it, man. I appreciate everything you do for me. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.